clear. Now, what do you guys think about the opening game? You guys talked about that a little bit, that there's some strategy. Do you think there's some weight to having like the 4-0 player on your team go out first just for motivational reasons, or is there more to that?
Uh,
Well, yeah, go ahead, Jockey.
well, I mean, there's like strength to leading off strong, and there's also strength to ending strong. I mean, if you truly believe like your 4-0 player is, head and shoulders above the rest, I do think there's a little element of variance in there, but I would say Life Coach is probably the strongest player on Nihilum. Very powerful results this year, and he has one of the better decks in Patron Warrior. There's also kind of that aspect now is who has the best decks. So I don't know. I think who you lead off with, it's mostly personal preference. You can go either way.
Yeah, I think both teams, they've actually led off with different players in the last 2 weeks. Nihilum led off with RDU in the first week, Life Coach in the second week, and Liquid led off with Savitz in the first week and Nyria in the second week. So this time, it's actually going to be the third player from each team that are going to lead it off. So both teams definitely mixing it up a lot.
Yeah, and you mentioned a bit about like the class changes, how most of the teams have stuck to setting the two classes to specific player and then just running with that. I think this is the first time we see Theiss play Mage. Last week he had a Druid and a Rogue that he brought, so a little bit of a difference. So far in the tournament, we've seen mostly Freeze Mage, and I'm very happy for that. It's certainly a very interesting, very exciting deck to see play.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the fact that Warrior is such like a big thing in the metagame right now, and in this format where you can bring 6 decks instead of 3 decks, you're less likely to run into a Warrior with your Freeze Mage, which it almost is certainly going to be in this league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we kind of theorize that the Freeze Mage is so much stronger when there's 6 decks because there really aren't 6 decks that beat it. So it's all but guaranteed to get a win. I mean, it could take a while if you run into bad matchups, like he got Warrior first game, which kind of sucks, but otherwise, it's a very powerful deck in this format.
I think in this format so far, we haven't seen any one class tank except Paladin, I believe.
Well,
I think
Druid
Paladin
was
has a pretty horrible record.
Druid was really bad last week. Savitz went 0-5 with Druid, and I think
Okay.
overall it was something like 2-14 with like Druid in the last 2 weeks. Something not that bad, but something pretty ridiculous.
It doesn't feel like Druids has like too many bad matchups, though. I mean, most of them are just pretty marginal, and you have to draw well.
Mind if I roll need?
Yeah, I feel like Druid was kind of leaning towards that 6th slot for, like, what do you pick as your 6th best deck? And so it's definitely tanked a bit. I know Osaka was pretty rattled after like losing 4 in a row to Tempo Storm with it, and Savitz hasn't performed well with it, but he did bring it back this week.
Yeah, I think pretty much for from Liquid as well, we kind of think of it as like the 5th or 6th best deck. Obviously, Warrior, Warlock, and Hunter being like the top 3, and then maybe like Mage is like one of the top 4 for the reasons that you mentioned before. But the other two are kind of meh.
Mm-hmm. Well, as far as the game that we're seeing here, seems like a pretty typical game. Are you surprised to not see the Armor Smith down on turn 2, or is it against the Freeze Mage? It just doesn't accomplish anything.
I think with the Armor Smith, you really just want to save it for a huge combo where you can gain like 10 armor in 1 turn, for example.
Yep, you're basically just saving it to abuse with your Whirlwind effects when you're playing the Patron version of the deck. So Control Warrior would be much more likely to just kind of throw it out pretty early. Like you could see it come out this turn as a Control Warrior, but as a Patron Warrior, I think you can get a lot more value out of it.
So in Blackrock Mountain, this matchup is actually 23% for the Freeze Mage player. Overall, the record is 3-10, and we saw it like we saw the Freeze Mage player do well last week in Nyria versus Ekop. But that, first of all, it required Ekop to miss an attack, and he like didn't clear his opponent's board. He didn't clear Nyria's board, so Ekop had to make a mistake in order for him to win the match, or in order for him to lose the match as the patron player.
Yeah, it seems very unlikely, but as bad matchups as Freeze Mage has, it seems to pull through. Even though it's kind of a bit of a fragile combo deck, it always has some really spectacular stuff that can happen. I feel like this matchup was actually considerably worse in the past when Emperor Tharson didn't exist.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Freeze Mage seems to be doing better against Warrior. Just in recent results, I feel like 23%, even in a low sample size, is higher than it used to be, really, where people were considering it. Even Firebat saying you cannot lose. I believe he said like 100% win rate, and then Maz went on to lose that matchup, and I'm sure he gave him a hard time about that. But
Yeah.
I've been on the bad side of it. It can happen.
We've even seen Firebat in the Kingwin Pro League. He actually just like gave up when he saw he was queuing Freeze Mage into Control Warrior before. But actually in C-Story Cup, I believe like the record was like 50-50. It was like 3-3 for Control Warrior versus Freeze Mage. So that's pretty awesome. And that was like right when Emperor Thorzen was released. So a lot of people back then, when Emperor was released, they were like, hey, maybe this matchup like just isn't as bad as it used to be by like 10 or 15% at least.
Yeah, I think it just Emperor Thorson creates so many more possibilities, and I think overall we've seen so much play, and this is a deck that just requires a lot of experience. That probably the overall skill the players playing the deck has also increased.
So Chalky, I know you're a very prominent Freeze Mage player. So how do you even win this matchup, first of all?
Well, I feel like one of the better ways, if you just kind of want to win it in deck building, is you can even just throw Malagos in your mage deck. I remember I talked to Zalay a lot about this matchup, and he said he basically plays it to fatigue all the time, and if they have Malagos, he just loses. Like, he doesn't play around it, and so a lot of patron players will play like that, like they won't really be expecting that extra, 20-ish burn is what Malagos brings to the table in comparison to, like Pyroblast or something. So the more burn you have, the better. I know a lot of players think like double Flame Strike helps a lot. You really want the heal bot. This game's generally going to go to fatigue. So both players want to kind of stick on the board. And that's kind of an interesting dynamic when neither deck is really built for board control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was talking to Naria about this matchup, he said that like pretty much the key about this matchup is actually you battle rage for 0, or you battle rage for as like little as possible, and you hit fatigue a little bit later than your opponent. Do you think that's like a good strategy, Chalky, or is that something that you would do in this matchup?
Yeah, I think it was Dog, who plays a lot of Freeze Mages, arguing with somebody in a Skype chat. They were like talking about this matchup, and he's like, you just don't play your draw spells as Freeze. And the other person's like, how do you not play draw spells? Well, you just don't play them. And the Warrior has a lot of draw in it too, so it's this really interesting dynamic of you have to hold back on how much draw you really want to play. It's going to be a really long game, and you kind of have to pace yourself.
It's kind of funny. I mean, I think I've seen quite a few of these, and I mean, I believe you guys, but I just haven't really seen that happen. Most of the time it ends for one player quite a bit before fatigue. But you mentioned the importance of the heal bot, which I thought was pretty interesting, where I think when players started to include the heal bot, it was mostly to beat Hunter. What kind of role does the heal bot play in this matchup?
Well, the heal bot basically just kind of helps, along with the ice barriers, it makes it so that your opponent really can't kill you that easily. And if they go for like a big pop your block play and plan to kill you or pop it again with a weapon the next turn, it basically just prevents that from ever happening. You can set up scenarios where you go to, that fatigue battle and you use Alex on yourself, you heal bot yourself, and that basically makes up for the fact that your hero power is worse.
Yeah. Another thing is that Freeze Mage is so refined that all Freeze Mage lists are 1 or 2 cards apart from each other. And before, when people weren't playing Healbot, the card that they played instead of that was the second Loot Hoarder. And if you follow the strategy of trying to get to fatigue a little bit later than your opponent, the second Loot Hoarder actually hurts you instead of helps you in that matchup.
Yeah. And it's always so hard to, like, if you're playing a deck with so much draw and you don't get the actual cards that do stuff, instead you get all the cards that draw, which we've seen so often in these type of combo decks. I mean, you just have to play some of them.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed that Tice kind of threw out the Frostbolt so willingly, because I think Archmage coined Frostbolt on this turn would have been really powerful into the Alex turn. You basically peel off the armor, then set them to 15, and you present 2 different threats with multiple fireballs in hand. But this way is also pretty powerful. I mean, he sets up a really huge threat, requires Sho to have the execute, which he does have, and even then he has something like Archmage Frost Nova on turn 10 going forward.
Yep. Well, it looks like if there's going to be a Grim Patron turn here. Doesn't the Doomsayer seem pretty attractive?
Yeah, especially after you see this execute. I mean, there's very few cards other than that answer the Doomsayer. I mean, some people used to play Shield Slam, but I think if you've looked at Show's list enough, which you can do in this league, you can study how a player plays and be very well prepared going into your match. You should know that he hasn't played Shield Slam in a while. It's very unlikely he has it in his deck.
Yeah, speaking of Shield Slam, wow, it's pretty somewhat like just committing to the board a lot. But yeah, speaking of Shield Slam, we've actually seen a lot more recently in Patron decks. We've seen a lot more cycle cards like Shield Slam and Slam in favor of like the big finishers like Dr. Boom and Grom. And I think that might hurt the matchup as well. So that might be why we're seeing Freeze Mage maybe win just like slightly more these days.
I mean, speaking of Freeze Mage winning,
yeah,
seems like he's in a pretty good spot here. It seems like Sho kind of went all in. He was playing one creature a turn just to try to stick on the board. That wasn't working. Thijs had the single target removal. And now he's like, well, if you got all the single target removal, maybe you don't have AoE removal. But that seems like a pretty risky gamble that he's about to lose.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what you said, Crip, about you not seeing it go to Fatigue, this game's not going to Fatigue. The Freeze Mage drew much better than the Patron player. It's not going to be a long game. I mean, I think that if this Doomsayer resolves, then the Archmage plus Ice Block or whatever he wants to do really is just going to set up a winning position for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We've actually like seen this kind of situation happen in the VA game House Cup where players were trying to like build anti-Freeze Mage decks, but with like massive heals and just like pretty much heals and Kazans and everything. But we saw one player, he built that kind of deck, I believe it was Stansifka, and he just couldn't kill the Archmage Antonidas, and that was why he lost the game. And it might be like the same situation here.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if Sho couldn't kill your Doomsayer, what's the chance he can kill an Archmage Antonidas when you Ice Lance face?
Yeah, it's very low. I mean, you could go for Ice Lance face and develop a Mad Scientist. You could also just play the Ice Block. I suppose the Ice Lance reduces his chances even further that he can kill it, so he'll probably go with that.
Yep.
And Sho does not look happy about this.
No, this seems like it's just about over. What could even be an answer for Archmage? It'd have to be like a slam into execute. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, a lot of the cards in the Patron deck are draw at this point, so he had a decent chance. No, not going to get there. So it's really important that he froze the face, or else Sho would actually have a way to clear this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would have had the 4 from the weapon and the 1 from the Cruel Task. It would have been a costly removal, but it still would have happened.
Yeah, definitely worth it to remove in that situation.
Yeah. Now, Sho is like mainly known as like a big ladder player, always getting like ranked #1 legend all the time, but maybe he just like doesn't practice as much like in-house or just against other Freeze Mage players because this deck, the Freeze Mage deck, is kind of extinct on the ladder. You think like that might be a reason why he's maybe not as familiar with this matchup?
This is a really grueling matchup to just playtest. Like, if you honestly wanted to play 100% optimally against another pro player, these matchups can take like up to 20 to 30 minutes to finish just a game. And how many games do you have to do to think your results are reliable? You get into this situation where it's like nobody really wants to, So it's a matchup that you basically have to go more off theory and the small amount of games you can. I would say like actually watching people play it, like studying videos is probably more effective than play testing it. So
Well, Sho gets a pretty lucky top deck there. It was kind of like a card too late, but Sho still has a decent amount of armor, and now with the Archmage Antonidas gone, I think that's actually like a limited amount of damage. Do you think maybe Sho can survive through all of this?
Well, there's still one Fireball left in the deck. Other than that, all the burn is gone because both Frostbolts are out and an Ice Lance is out, so the second Ice Lance does nothing. So I mean, that's 32, and he's at 27. So technically, yeah, he can survive through this, especially if he can pick up, second Armor Smith. He will have enough to outlast the damage.
Wow.
But it's going to be really tough for him to find a way to also somehow get back on the board and do something about this.
All right. Now, I believe if you just Blizzard, the Acolyte will trigger twice at 1 HP, so you do not want to Blizzard.
Well, drawing twice, it is pretty bad here for Tice. He doesn't really want to give
3 times, right? Because it'll draw once from the Blizzard and then twice because it'll die from 2 Death Rattles at 1 HP.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, you could time it so that you Blizzard and then kill the ghoul. That way, it only draw twice.
Yeah, Tice just opting to go for face here instead of a board clear, and I think that might be a little weak to like an Armor Smith top deck here. If that happens.
Yeah, I think what Sho realizes here is it's like, okay, I don't want to draw up, but I need an Armor Smith. Like I'm so dead essentially. You know, if he has Pyroblast, I know he has another Fireball. That's 16 already. You know, I really need to find something here. Doesn't matter how much I draw.
Oh, we might see the double draw at 1 HP. I think that's how it works. I feel like it's one of those things that you fail to predict sometimes, but I think he would have drawn twice if he used the weapon. But,
I actually
I guess...
didn't know about that. That's pretty interesting.
I've seen it in some like highlight videos or some of the disguised toast highlight videos where like the explosive cheap triggers and he draws 3 cards instead of 2 cards that you would expect.
I mean, you guys talked about, I mean, he could have survived, but I think with the way that Tice drew, he just top decked the last burn spell in his deck immediately. I think he's just going to burn him out here.
Do you think there's some merit to just Ice Lancing face to prevent just more incoming damage? But it doesn't seem like it's much with the Ice Block and a Heal Bot in hand.
I think there is, because think about the only way you lose if you Pyroblast face is really if your opponent top decks Armor Smith. So you could go Fireball, Fireball, Ice Lance face instead.
Oh, to prevent the Armor Smith. I see.
Yeah, that would make it so
true.
he can't proc off his Armor Smith, as far as you know.
Yeah, unless he cruel Taskmasters.
Yeah, he does have the task.
Unstable ghoul. Oh well, that's a pretty good play actually. Just get rid of that.
This works out really well too. Yeah.
Exactly.
He doesn't need the 1 ping damage. It doesn't affect anything, so it's more important to play around the Armor Smith top deck. But that's gonna do it. Yeah.
Sho gets some more draw. Even if it's an Armor Smith here, he's not gaining 6 this turn. It is an Armor Smith there.
I think.
No.
No, he's barely dead because of the ping play by Tice. Tice doesn't look happy, but I mean, he's still alive.
Yeah, he still has it. It's exactly 10, I believe.
And if you follow Sho's decks, I believe he only runs 1 Cruel Taskmaster in his deck, and he's used both Inner Rages, so no more ways to proc that.
So Tice barely got out. I mean, I think he was still in a really nice spot, but we could have seen kind of that fatigue thing play out had he not gotten such a nice Archmage Antonitis this game.
Yeah, imagine if Sho maybe had like 1 more HP, and then he drew into something that like gained him a lot of armor. Tice pretty much had no damage left, and I believe like almost pretty much no damage left in his deck.
No damage whatsoever.
Yeah, it would have been like a pretty close game.
Would it? Because we also saw the Grim Patron kind of run through almost all of its key cards and combos, and he was much further in the deck than the Freeze Mage was. I feel like the Fatigue game would have gone to the Mage 100% there.
Yeah, I think with the heal bot especially, I mean, it just guarantees that despite your hero power being worse, you're still fine in the late game.
Yeah, so I have some good news for you, Chalky. Sho is now not undefeated. He's 4-1. So now you're one of the only 4 players that has that like 4-0 status.
There we go.
Pretty good now.
Life Coach is up next.
But also, Thice is in the green. I believe he's 5-4 now. You know, we should be grateful for the smaller things that we have, right?
That's still a respectable record. I mean, if you ask any pro, like 55%, that's pretty much expected. So,
yeah, pretty good stuff.
We also have to mention, I believe the graphics overlay was slightly incorrect previously, and Tice and RDU's position was actually swapped. So it was actually Tice that had the Mage, but it's correct right now. So yeah, we can see Tice, he had the Mage, he has the Warlock.
But Nihilum did swap some things from last week. RDU ditched the Paladin, got the Rogue. As a result, Thice had to ditch his Rogue, and they dropped the Druid. And Thice basically is playing all new decks in this week on Archon Team League.
Yeah, it's interesting. Life Coach kind of got, he'd been playing Warlock and Warrior, which, he went 4-0. He's a really strong player, but if you ask anyone, Warlock and Warrior are 2 of the top 3 decks, so you're pretty expected to do really well. This week he has the top warrior deck still, but he kind of got the also the bottom of the barrel deck druid. So his team kind of relying on his druid skills to bring them out. He has played a lot of druid.
Yeah, if you ask anyone, he's pretty much like a druid player, a warrior player, or patron warrior player, a handlock player, and then like maybe a control paladin player, but that's not really that strong.
Now, what kind of strategy do you have coming back from a loss like this if you're on Team Liquid? So, you kind of lost an unfavorable matchup. You thought you're really good going in, and you're in this spot. Is it basically the same strategy that you probably wouldn't want to throw Show out there because you wouldn't want to perhaps limit yourself on the choices you can make if he does drop a game because he would be benched.
Yeah.
But is there some mind games to that?
Well, yes. I don't know, Chalky. I don't know like how Forsen Boys does it, but at least from my perspective, I think the benching rule doesn't matter as much early on as if it's like later on when there's only like 3 or 4 decks left. So I don't like. It may be very likely that Show would be sent out yet again.
Yeah, the implications of the benching rule are basically okay. So say Show got benched. Now your Hunter and your Warrior decks can't be played. So now your opponents get to know, okay, let's send out our decks that are weak to Hunter and Warrior. But then in turn, if you have a third weakness, then the other team is more likely to send that out. So there's a lot of mind games going on. There's a lot of mind games in the first place because initially after someone loses, you have to think, okay, like Crypt said, they're less likely to send them out. But some teams, like I saw Tempo Storm doing this a lot, they would just send them out right again thinking, they won't expect this. Mm-hmm. So you think, okay, there's a chance we get benched and get punished, but there's also a chance we get a really nice matchup based off of this.
Yeah, we see the next queue up is going to be Savitz with the Warlock and Life Coach as the Warrior. And I'm going to have a little spoiler here. I know Savitz is going to be playing the Handlock, so it's going to be a pretty favorable matchup, like the absolute most favorable matchup against Life Coach, who will like 100% of the time bring Patron Warrior.
Yep. A lot of players talk about how Handlock is generally favored against Patron Warrior. You said it's the best. Is there no better deck to defeat the Grim Patron Warrior?
There's literally no better deck. I'm going to pull up the stats right now, and it's actually going to be Handlock is 74% favored against Patron Warrior, and the record in professional games is 37-13.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
That's really good.
Yeah, I think earlier on, when Grim Patron Warrior really started to hit the tournament scene, that most players analyzing it kind of thought that there was no deck that even did much better than 50-50 against it. But it seems like the decks that have the big board clears and the big taunts kind of do all right, and Handlock certainly has that.
Yeah, exactly. And another mind game is that Savitz, he brought Zoo in both his last matches. So it's going to be a kind of a mind game here. And I think Life Coach, knowing that Savitz brought Zoo in the last 2 matches, he'll like keep his Fire War Axes, he'll keep like all his anti-aggro cards. So that'll actually swing the matchup towards Savitz even more, who kind of needs like a pick-me-up from going 0-5 in the last week.
And you guys see that Life Coach is already roping.
Well, in the mulligan stage, we've seen basically every single player just let the timer roll out, not to give the other player any kind of advantage whatsoever.
There was just a little bug where the rope actually came up.
Yeah.
All right.
Especially in like when you're playing a Warlock deck, you always want to rope just to not give your opponent any information on how to mulligan, if it's like Handlock or if it's Malagos Lock. And we do indeed see a Fire War Axe in Life Coach's opening hand, which he might definitely not have kept as much if he like knew 100% that Savitz was going for like a Handlock style. But I think Life Coach right now, he's very confident because he has a lot of good cards against Zoo, but he's going to be hit by like a pretty big surprise when Savitz passes turn 1 and Life taps turn 2.
Yeah, he's actually thinking about if he should coin out Armor Smith or even... Yeah, I would say that would be the main consideration if you think your opponent's playing an aggressive Zoo deck. Like, it kind of denies a Haunted Creeper play. Does pretty well against some things later on, but yeah, I mean, against Handlock, it really doesn't do anything.
Oh, it does. I think it does much worse than nothing. I feel not having the coin lets you basically force you to delay your combo 1 turn, which often will throw out your win condition.
Yeah, but Life Coach, he saw that Savitz passed turn 1, so is he confident enough to beat a Zoo deck that doesn't have a turn 1 play? I think that's the question.
Wow. Life Coach kind of sniffs it out here a little bit.
Oh, I think Savitz was kind of going for like sort of the mind games there. He picked up his Sunfairy Protector. Like he made Life Coach think like, hey, maybe I have a turn 2 play.
Yeah, no, I think that might.
Just a bunch of Imp Gang bosses right now, right?
I think it might like kind of feign like, okay, I have an egg, or maybe he has a Haunted Creeper and he decided to tap instead. That's kind of what he's going for with that. I don't think he actually considered playing a Sun Fury.
Definitely not. And Life Coach, like you could definitely see the reaction from his face right when Savitz life tapped. He's like, "Oh man, maybe I like mismulliganed against this."
Yeah, but he's doing all right. I mean, even though he has some anti-aggro cards, I feel really the only one that has a real liability is perhaps the Axe.
Well, the Patrons and the Armor Smith really don't do too much in this matchup. I would say the Gnomish and the Slam are fine. You just want to cycle into your answers, cycle into your combo, but Patrons, you can't really play them just out in this matchup, or else you're very weak to Shadow Flame, you're very weak to Hellfire.
Yeah, and in order to activate your Patrons, you also need Whirlwind effects, which you kind of do want to save for like drawing cards or for getting those big Frothing Berserkers. So those are actual resources as well that you have to allocate.
Yeah, basically just having any non execute card reduces your chance of having execute by just that marginal percent. You know, it's probably a few percent per card you keep. And like Monk said, I'm pretty sure he probably kept that Fiery War Axe, maybe he kept a Slam, and those are cards that could be execute, which would come in big against a turn 4 giant.
Also, the more I think about it, it seems this more modern version of the Grim Patron Warrior, which we keep seeing in tournaments these days, seems a lot worse against its bad matchups. So, like, I know the earlier Grim Patron decks were running Gromash, they were running Big Game Hunter in a lot of them, and I think these are all cards that kind of help this matchup do a little better. But these days, with a lot of Cycle instead, it seems like more of a throwaway.
Yeah, it's kind of a consideration where players initially you want to cover your your weaknesses rather than play to your strengths. But I feel like the more refined versions, you end up wanting to kind of emphasize what you're good at rather than trying to throw in one big game hunter and get them sometimes. Yeah, it'd be great here, but
yeah.
Yeah, I think the other way to look at it is that your win condition is basically you put a lot of Frothing Berserkers with a Warsong Commander on the field, and you just kill your opponent the handlock. And having a lot more cycle cards like the slams and shield blocks, they help you do that more instead of actually just trying to kill these mountain giants.
Well, it is a mountain giant he has to deal with this turn, and he doesn't have too great of an answer. It seems like perhaps it's time to draw some more cards. I feel like the other Gnomish is pretty good here.
Yeah, he can remove it, but like you said, it's very costly. You have to Slam, Fire War Axe, trade on your whole board, and take 8. I feel like the proactive play here is to just play the second Gnomish, go face, start threatening, you know, that you might have some of those combo pieces, make Savitz make some weaker defensive plays, and just try to make him trade into your stuff.
It also seems okay, like Savitz doesn't have any other creature on board. Hellfire kills none of those creatures, and if he's going to Shadow Flame, you basically accomplish a task a better way.
Yeah, I feel like Savitz, you know, he's played this enough that he knows he's just supposed to go face with the 8/8. Ignore those little chump minions. You're not really at risk of dying to a combo yet when it's just turn 5. There's no Thaurissan that's hit the board yet. So you can pretty much just drop this Belcher and go face.
Yeah. Well, very good standard play from both players. So far, it seems the most impressive things that we've seen was Life Coach holding back, playing against what was most likely, at least from his side of the board, a Zoo Warlock. And you know, having that restraint, let him curve out a little bit better, let him draw a few extra cards early on, which might be the difference, but he still has to draw into those cards that develop that lethal combination.
Yeah, he just basically, he needs to take care of this mountain giant eventually, or that's basically in 4 turns, he's just going to die solely to this mountain giant. But the good thing for him is that if Savitz doesn't clear off any of these minions, he'll be able to draw at least 4 cards in the next turn just with Battle Rage alone. So that'll give him like a much higher percentage to draw into the execute.
Yeah. I feel like that's basically what he's going to have to go for here is like a Whirlwind, Battle Rage, and Execute play. And if that happens, especially with that Thorson top deck, that's actually incredibly good for him.
Yeah, if he can stabilize and take the board, drop that Thorson, even if Thorson gets killed immediately, it's such a profound card in this deck that it can just be a win on its own.
Yeah, I think Life Coach is actually planning this move in the previous turn. I think a lot of players, less experienced players, would actually just go for the slam on the Mountain Giant, hope to God to draw and execute. But Life Coach like went for the much more stable play. Again, thinking very hard on roping and just going for like planning out his turns in the future.
Yeah, he really did. He maximized his chance to draw execute by 2 additional cards actually, because he drew a card with the Gnomish and he drew an additional card with the Battle Rage. And I mean, it's really going to pay off here. That's where the execute was. So.
Well, he can't fully clear the board, but it's pretty close, and he gains a bit of armor doing it. So it seems like Life Coach solution is actually pretty good.
I think there's merit to just not attacking and letting your opponent have to decide if they value the face damage or if they want to trade down. So this is going to set him up for a much nicer like Fiery War Axe here, but this is kind of awkward because he really did want to play an Emperor around this turn, but it wouldn't be reducing anything that valuable, so he's 1 damage off, or no, he can clear this board, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's really important for Savitz to play the Emperor on turn 6 because I think right now is when Life Coach would want to play his own Emperor. He does have a lot of combo pieces already in his hand, like the War Song and the 2 Grim Patrons. He doesn't have the Frothing yet, but right now, this turn, I don't think he can even play the Emperor because he needs to deal with that other Emperor or the game's kind of just going to fall away from him.
He actually can't kill the other Emperor. It's basically the minion health is in such a way that it's inconvenient. He has enough damage. He has 10 damage with Slam and Deathbite, but he can't distribute it in such a way that it would kill both the Belcher, the Slime, and then the Emperor.
Yeah, just 1 damage off. So if he thinks that way, maybe the best move here...
Maybe just play Emperor.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely considered, but now he really has to make a quick play. So I feel like if you run the rope out this much, you're pretty committed to just playing the Emperor.
Yeah, it still doesn't seem too bad, though. There aren't too many key cards, but there's a few that do a few nice things there.
Yeah, the War Song is the main one. It reduces your combo turn cost by 1. But other than that, I mean, the other cards are basically just let you do more things in the coming turns. They don't actually improve your combo turn.
Well, Savitz has a lot more options here now with his cards being so reduced. I'd imagine he'd want to reduce them even further. So what would be the play here to clear your opponent's board while not losing your Emperor?
Ragnaros, I would assume. That's a 50-50, but you're really not unhappy with 8 face damage. So, okay. I mean, I completely agree with this play from Savitz. You really just want the reduction.
Wow, he gets it.
Yeah, I would say it's better to get it than to get the face damage, because if you just keep reducing your cards and you know the patron only had 1 wave of reduction, you're pretty safe.
Yeah, and now I think Life Coach is in a similar situation once again. It's hidden, like this Emperor again is hidden behind the Sludge Belcher, and there's like not a really easy way to deal with it. I think he just has to draw cards right now.
Well, I think there's just a Ragnaros.
Yeah, exactly. You can actually kill it right now by like proccing the Death Rattle of the Death Spite, but I'm not sure if he wants to do that.
Yeah, if he actually slams it and does that play, he can clear the board if he gets an execute.
Yeah, if he draws the execute off of the slam, he has a board clear. But it wastes your Death Spite, which is a very important card.
Well, he's roping here, so I guess he's going to try to make a quick play, but I can't see what that is.
I think you have to go with the... I'd probably go Death Spite. I wouldn't go for the execute. I would just play the Acolyte, get the guaranteed extra card draw. It's too ambitious to really... Oh, wow. Looks like he didn't really spot the Slam War Axe. He could have cleared off the Belcher, the Slime, and the Emperor. But maybe he's just committed to the fact that, okay, you know, that Emperor already went off twice. At this point, it's too far gone.
Is that the call that you make? Is it after 2 turns?
Well, he does have a frothing, so maybe, like I said, using up your Despite without getting value is a very poor thing to do. So maybe he's realizing I have to save this Despite charge. I need it for this kill. If I can draw the other frothing, maybe an inner rage, maybe I can piece together a kill.
Yeah. Also, this slime is actually a huge liability for Savitz right now because it adds damage possibly for the Frothing Berserker to just kill him off. If Life Coach is somehow able to draw maybe another Whirlwind effect, maybe the second Frothing Berserker, and Savitz doesn't have enough taunts, it's highly likely that he could just maybe just die in the next turn.
Savitz has...
Oh, he's silencing Ragnaros.
Yep, just to get extra damage out. I wonder how much damage he had this turn. Looks like he was a little off. He was 1 off, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, he was 1 damage off.
With the Dark Bomb and the Hellfire.
Okay, wow. So both Frothings were actually drawn.
He looks...
Savitz is really unhappy with the play here.
Yeah, I wonder why. I don't think he had lethal. I guess maybe he...
I think he should have Shadow Flamed the Owl.
Oh, I think he thought the Rag was going to go off. Like, you know, he emoted and he Shadow Flamed, and then he was like, looked pretty... He like thought he had the game won. I think that's what happened.
Oh, I think he should have Argused the Owl and
That's
then
what I
Shadow
said,
Flame
yeah.
that. Yeah,
Flame
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing that seems
Okay,
like
that
it
makes
was like a
sense.
big mistake, but still, like, it
That's
doesn't really
not gonna
matter.
cost him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is a big deal, sort of. If Life Coach had good cards here, it would matter because then next turn he could go Jirax's Hellfire and Dark Bomb to just end the game with 9 from hand. So, like, say somehow Life Coach finds a way back in.
How does Life Coach actually finish this? That rope is ticking. This is a turn that requires much more time than that.
I wonder if he got it. Oh no.
It doesn't look like it. And that's just gonna be it.
Yeah, he missed the attack.
I believe that's the,
down goes Life Coach.
yeah, that's the third
Go
time in
longer.
Archon League. Third time in Archon League where someone like missed the last patron attack. And now Chalky, you're one of only 3 players to have a 4-0 record.
Let's go.
It's like the first time we actually mentioned this thing where you know the players have undefeated records, and on this day, like all the remaining ones fall.
Hopefully this doesn't happen to me.
Grind to those hands. Yep. All right. Well, yeah, a bit of a slip up there from Life Coach. Certainly a bad spot to start in, but doesn't make it happen. Series is now tied up. Team Liquid and Nihilum each have a point on the board. Still, basically all the games left.
Yep.
I mean, we haven't really seen any like big things being out. I mean, the biggest things are taking a win with the inconsistent decks, right? Like that puts you considerably ahead. Like winning with Druid or winning with Paladin.
It's taking a win with the bad decks, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
none of the bad decks have won yet. Mage and Warlock. Warlock's top 3. Mage, I think, like Monk said, is arguably kind of the 4th slot if you had to number them off. So no huge wins yet for either team.
Yep, certainly some demoralized players with losing their flawless records, though. But I'm sure they'll brush that off and come back and probably win some of their games here.
Well, on the opposite side of the spectrum, Savitz got his win in right off the bat. He was not doing too well these past 2 weeks, so it's going to feel good from his end.
Yeah, when I was talking through to Savitz throughout the week, we were just basically saying that basically his confidence is like the most important part about his performance in this league because, like, you know, Savitz is probably like one of the most emotional players, if not the most emotional player in the Hearthstone pro scene. So he took it very badly that he went 0-5. Like, it's kind of like letting down the team, and even though like everyone on Liquid supported him, like it just doesn't feel good at all to like go 0-5 and just like when you're all the rest of your team just wins all their matches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's not too much you can do, and there's always that saving grace that there's at least one player that did worse than you so far in the tournament. So there's that. But now I think there's at least 3 players that did worse than him in the tournament now that he has that win.
Oh man, what a saving grace.
Hey man, if you're not last, that's something, right?
Yeah, I think Tiddler actually has the worst record, which is pretty ironic because a lot of players, very much respect Tiddler. He just won DreamHack. Very good player. I mean, it just kind of goes to show variance can really affect anyone. It doesn't mean much, if you lose any given day, which also in turn means it doesn't mean much if you win any given day. It's all about the long run, which is where these dominant players come in, and that's where this league aspect comes in. This is 7 weeks. You can brush off a week. Everyone's still in the running, essentially.
Yeah, it's funny because like some of the most respected players in this league have the worst records. Like Colento, he went 0-4 in the first week. Trump, he recently won the HCC Recharge tournament, but he still went 1-5 last week as well. So just like pretty interesting that, again, just like you said, the variance, and we'll see like how everyone's records kind of even out at the end. But we're going to see the next matchup right here, Naria's Mage, which, spoiler alert, it's probably going to be Freeze Mage yet again versus RDU's Rogue.
This is such a cool matchup. I think this is one of my favorite ones to watch, where the Rogue is such a bad spot, but the decisions from both players make it such an interesting game where really the Rogue just tries its best to do stuff, and the Mage tries its best to be like as greedy as possible to draw out the combo.
I think... No, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say that I really think like RDU, like we've seen Tice bring Rogue last time, RDU bring Rogue this time, which really tells me that like Nihilum is not known as a team besides Life Coach as having players with a lot of like specialist decks. You don't see RDU like being known for one particular deck. Tice might be known for Druid, but besides that, he's like very well rounded. So maybe that could even be a weakness in the Archon League where just everyone is like too well rounded.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the players that perform the best in this league won't be necessarily the people that win all of the tournaments, because like I talked about, in tournaments, basically, with the current way meta is, you have to play Patron Warrior well. I mean, a lot of pros agree on that. It's the #1 deck. If you're not playing the #1 deck well, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. And in this format, only one person has to play it. You can have your Patron specialist on Patron, everybody else on what they're comfortable with, which, for me, I really enjoy, so...
Alright, well, the Mage has a lot of direct damage cards, which is normally, like, not so great. But it also has a decent amount of draw, so I actually kind of don't hate this position from the Mage.
Yeah, this is typically a fairly favorable matchup for the Mage player, and just going by stats-wise, yet again, Freeze Mage is favored 15-8 in tournament games in Block Rock Mountain, so that's about a 35% win rate for the Rogue.
Pay attention, class.
Yeah, I think the Rogue decks have kind of been adapting a little. I know that Dog and some other Rogue players have actually started running like double Healbot, which essentially kind of makes the go all in on Alex and then burn plan a lot worse for the Mage. So the Mage has to focus on running you out of cards, grinding you out, which is another game plan that the Freeze Mage really excels at.
Yeah, the other thing is that the Rogue really excels at just, laying on the pressure big time. And if you can have 1 or maybe 2 pressure turns and then drop a Loatheb right after, often it's just too much for a Freeze Mage to deal with. And right now, some of those pieces are coming together for the Rogue, so it's looking like it's going to be a pretty close game.
Yeah, the Loatheb isn't too powerful. Like you said, you need to have aggression generally before you play Loatheb, so you really want to lead into it, which is why RDU's not going for the Loatheb on curve.
Yeah, this Flame Tongue Totem is being kind of annoying here, especially where until this turn, Naria, he didn't really have any AoE, so he's having to use all his burn basically just to take down these annoying minions, which I don't think is like too bad for him, because this is what I most commonly see in this matchup, where the Freeze Mage is okay with just dealing with all the minions one by one.
Oh, yeah. That's a bad draw.
Right, like the Rogue has a lot of draws that essentially do nothing. Like Backstab, not really going to do anything. Sap, not going to do anything. I mean, even the weapon buffs, they're essentially burn spells, and when your opponent's at 25, and they have the potential to have Ice Barrier, Heal by Alexstrasza, you don't want burn spells, you just want to control the board. And that's something that, right now, the Rogue is really struggling to do.
One thing I want to note is that there's actually a Edwin Van Cleef in RDU's deck, and pretty much that card has been extinct from tournament play in the last month or so. And I'm wondering if he brought that card specifically maybe for against Freeze Mage, because it's typically like a pretty good card against Freeze Mage, a deck that they don't run BGH, they don't run any silences.
Right.
Yep.
How about that sprint draw? That kind of makes it so a lot of things are suddenly possible.
Yeah, the sprint draw, especially with the prep already in hand, was one of the things RDU was really looking for, just to kind of draw into more stuff. Now, he has already gotten rid of all of his 4-drops, I assume. You know, he's played 3 4-drops out. He got rid of his Saucy, which means later in the game, his burst from hand is going to be a lot weaker. And he has Lotheb already in hand, so really the only big monsters still in his deck are Azure Drakes and maybe like SI agents. So there's not that much great stuff in his deck either.
Yeah, but that Van Cleef can come down. Even if it comes down as a 6/6, it's still pretty threatening here.
Yeah, it looks like RDU might go for this turn with a sap. Yeah, gonna make a really huge Van Cleef. This does get rid of the prep for the sprint, but like I was saying, there's not much he can really sprint into at the moment, so he can save that for later.
Yeah, that's a pretty scary Van Cleef, but I think Nihilum will have a lot of turns to possibly draw into a Doomsayer, perhaps. On the other hand, though, Nihilum has already used 2 Fireballs, so that's 2 options to deal with this Edwin Van Cleef that he doesn't have in his deck.
Yeah, I think what RDU is going for here is hoping that Nihilum maybe tries to set up a 2-turn clear on it, and then he can disrupt that with the Lotheb and get in 10 or 20 damage, which is, you know, maybe just even enough to pop the block over the next few turns, if there were even a block down.
Yeah, it
So-
seems like the block might not even be the best play here. I think you want an active turn when you're staring at a 10-8 rather than an investment for later.
Yeah. I mean, these Frost Novas are very key cards with Lotheb. One of the few things you can really develop after the Lotheb comes out. So having both of those, this might even bait RDU into playing the Lotheb this turn and then getting Frost Nova again, which is really not what you want to see.
I feel like here you really can't do too much. I think it's really just sprint.
Yeah, if you... The Mad Scientist really does kind of make things worse, because if there were no Mad Scientist here, he could put 17 on the board, plus the 3 from the weapon is 20, and the Eviscerate's 24. That's enough to kill your opponent if he doesn't have the second Frost Nova.
That's true. And often when you're in a bad matchup, when you're not in a great situation, taking a wild gamble is the good route.
Yeah, like, if Nihilum gets an ice block off of... From RD's perspective, he doesn't know that there's, you know, a Frost Nova sitting there. So, like, say he doesn't get Frost Nova, and Nihilum gets a block off of this Mad Scientist, he can still pop that block. And he can pop it, I believe, and leave him at 1. So...
Wow. Doomsayer draw.
So it looks like he did get that ice block, which is probably the weaker of the two. Because, like I said, the rogue can really pop that at will. Now, Frost Nova's going to be a pretty big saving grace, so...
Yeah, you can follow up with the Doomsayer Mad Scientist Blizzard play.
And then possibly draw into Flame Strike after that, which will effectively neuter all the threats in RDU's deck.
Yep, RDU would basically be out of stuff because Azure Drake and SI Agent can be answered by, you know, as little as a Frostbolt. So
Wow,
RDU
that
would
is
be...
a lot of damage, though, from the rogue. Holy cow.
Yeah, the problem is, though, I mean, with Saucy Deckhand gone, Lotheb gone, you don't have a way to guarantee that those oils can hit a minion. And so if he puts 7, he's probably going to have to, you know, maybe like double oil this turn and put 7 damage into a Doomsayer. But Blade Flurry actually changes things a lot, and it makes it so much better because you don't have to actually put your face into the Doomsayer. Can he pop the block? I think so. He'd be one off if he went with the deadly poison eviscerate, so he'd have to eviscerate twice. The mana is 7, so he can't pop the block. He's 1 mana off doing that. You can put him to 1. But there's really no reason to, so I think he'll just hold back on the second eviscerate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really fortunate for him, though, that there was no Ice Barrier. Now, he's going to get an Ice Barrier off of the Mad Scientist, and he has 1 in hand, but those are basically not going to get value because the Eviscerates just kind of bypass it.
Oh, he does
Or he can pop the block. I guess I did bad math there. My bad. Forgot that.
That's a really big deal. That basically requires an anti-kill bot.
Yeah. And there is no actual board. Oh, wow. Well, I think the second block Blizzard is probably going to be the play here.
Yeah, I really don't see anything else. You have to figure that he needs the block in order to survive any more spell damage. And he needs to stall the board, so really don't see anything else here.
Yeah, I would actually still say with that Blizzard top deck and the heal bot in hand, maybe the Mage is still in a fine spot. The Rogue's really going to have to burn everything next turn and just be out of stuff, and maybe just a heal bot Frostbolt ping could seal it.
Well, you can proc the block with 1 Eviscerate. You can do some damage with the SI.
Yep.
What if you just get another? What if you just get another SI over the next 2 turns?
Yeah, I mean that's basically what he needs. He needs that or the second Blade Flurry to deal that 1 damage through the Ice Barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, so Nyria is going to spot the play he needs to do to play around, any burn spell.
Mm-hmm. How likely do you think it is that maybe RDU actually holds off on this SI agent just to...
He can't. Or, okay, now he can because, he can play anti-kill bot and eviscerate, but then that puts him at 3, so the SI agent really isn't effective.
Well, if you do this and then RDU doesn't play the heal bot and you get like a fan into the second SI7 next turn.
Okay. Well, I mean, these are important considerations. RDU has to find a way that he sees himself winning this game, and unfortunately for him, I think he's just not going to be able to play around Healbot this game.
Mm-hmm.
So many options.
Yeah, after that Healbot comes up, like the only burst in RDU's deck, he's used at least 1 Deadly Poison, he's used both Tinkers, he's going to use both Eviscerates, I would hope. And there's just really nothing left. And the Southeast deckman, of course.
He used both Deadlies, I believe. He used 1 earlier in the game. And 1 on the flurry turn, so... little bit of a mistake here. He could have put him to 1. That's actually pretty relevant. That's basically just healing your opponent for 2.
Yeah, he could have Eviscerate without the combo and then SI with combo to do that damage proccing block at 1 life instead of 3.
Yep.
What do you think about not playing the heal bot on this turn? Because your opponent has used both Blizzards and both Frost Novas, that it might be likely that your opponent, he doesn't have like a Flame Strike perhaps, and he has to clear off all these minions 1 by 1. So now RDU actually has 3 less power on the board than he would have if he just played the heal bot.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not a good situation for RDU. He's pretty much done now. I mean, the Rogue is essentially the Mage is essentially at 19, 27 with the second Ice Barrier here. And it's not like RDU can choose not to proc them. So like I said, I think RDU's line was not respecting the second, or the heal bot rather. And that was something he just couldn't play around.
Alright. Well, not the greatest Emperor, but it still has to be dealt with. And the Rogue has nothing but its board to deal with it, which basically puts him nowhere.
Yeah, and Blade Flurry, little late. I mean, it wouldn't have really won him the game anyway, but really does nothing here.
Yeah, I want to note right now that there are pretty much like 2 versions of Rogue right now. There's like the standard Rogue that RDU is running, and then there's like the Mr. Yagut Rogue with the Assassin's Blade and the 2 Goblin Auto Barbers.
Auto Barbers, yeah.
Exactly. And then Tice actually used that version in the last week, and RDU's using this version this week. And I think the version with Assassin's Blades would be doing a lot better against this deck, because that version, it can get like huge Assassin's Blade and it can just kill off the mage. So maybe switching up these decks between the players. If Tice had been playing this game instead, he might have just won this game with the superior deck against Freeze Mage.
Yeah, definitely there's potential for that. I think the Assassin's Blade, clearly very good card against any deck that's really going to turn the game into a grindy game, especially when they don't play weapon removal.
Alright, well, here's where we start making a Fireball Factory, and RDU gets pretty upset here.
Yeah,
this really is a helpless situation.
Yep. He is 1 mana off lethal, so he won't really have it next turn, but and there's probably going to be a flurry to come out.
Yeah, Sprint is one of the last cards in your deck. Probably not what you want to see.
Yeah, I don't think he even has enough damage to kill Nyria at this point in his deck. Yeah, Nyria can just Alex himself.
Yeah, the last cards are something like the second Azure Drake, Backstab, maybe Thalnos. So pretty much all dead cards. Oh, and the second Sap.
Yeah, I think we saw Thalnos. I think RDU still has the Backstab, still has the Sap. Those are both completely useless.
Oh, yeah. And Farseer.
Coming back to the whole Conquest format, there actually is merit in not showing off your deck when you know you're going to lose. And at this point, RDU can know for a fact, I don't have enough damage in my deck. I cannot win this game. I can't sprint. You know, is there point to showing these last 6 cards? They are pretty obvious cards, but especially if he does have a surprise left in there, he could just concede at this point.
Yeah. On the other hand, if he has a surprise that might help him win the game, maybe like the Assassin's Blade that he just randomly teched in, maybe he still might want to stay in this game.
Yep. I mean,
would Assassin's Blade really do anything at this
probably
stage?
not. Probably not.
Yeah. It's...
I bring life.
Well, Nyria is going for the aggressive Alexstrasza. I think I would just fatigue my opponent out completely. Just make
demoralize them.
Yeah. Make them show off their deck. Don't do any damage. Just chill back.
There's that other SI. Still pretty useless. RD is really thinking here, but I'm not so sure what he's thinking about.
Like, how dead am I with those guaranteed fireballs in his hand? He knows he's dead to 18 from hand, so... Yeah, I mean, the last cards are exactly what we expected.
But yeah, like you said, I think we haven't seen a Farseer in this deck. Is that correct?
Yeah, and now, okay, so if you're Nyria... If you've been tracking, you kind of count up, you're like, I don't think he has room for a Farseer. And that's important information for your teammates to have later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does make that 3 slot a lot less useful.
Yep.
And there we go. Team Liquid is ahead of what is, before this set, the top team in the Archon Team League, I believe. Nihilum and I think it's Foursome Boys were currently the 2 teams with the best record. I think they were tied for the best records. That's right. 2 wins, 0 losses, and 12 overall game wins. Well, started to slip a little bit here, but I think both teams have reason to be pretty confident still in this matchup today.
Yeah, kind of going back to the Tier 1, Tier 2 deck discussion. Mage again, pretty Tier 1 deck. Winning with it's not a huge deal. Now, if the Rogue got to win there, that's kind of, a bigger deal, as Rogue kind of falls into that 5/6 slot. So pretty important to get a win with. But if you look at Team Liquid's 1 loss they've had, it fell on the shoulders of that Druid deck. And so that's kind of really the deck we need to watch out for if that can get a win.
Yeah, on the other side of the coin, we also have to watch out for the Druid deck from Life Coach. And Life Coach, being one of those players that almost has one of those perfect records, it might be the day where Life Coach just falls completely, and Chalky, you pull even further ahead from Life Coach in the number of wins overall.
I still have to play tomorrow, so hopefully I can win with the classes I brought. Kind of some
just-
interesting stuff there.
We're just setting up Chalky for like an epic failure. That's all
Yeah,
we're
I
doing.
know. You guys are hyping me up. It's gonna come crashing down.
Yeah. All right. Well, in terms of picks, we just had RDU lose. So I guess the mind game starts once again. Do you want to send out RDU, or does it seem more likely to be playing Warlock, Patron, or Druid? Now, is there much in common between Warlock, Patron, or Druid? It seems like they're all generally pretty slow decks.
Well, we're gonna get the answer here, and it's gonna be Druid.
Oh, one of them's getting a win. This
Oh
is a
my God.
huge match.
This is definitely. It's probably like the most important match
Yeah,
in this whole series.
This has incredible implications. Monk was talking about how weak Druid's done, just statistic
Druid
wise.
has to win. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fact that Druid has done very poorly in this league, and so now Druid versus Druid, you're feeling good, but on the other side of the coin, it's like if you drop this match, oh man.
Now, what kind of druids have we seen so far? I mean, we've seen the typical combo druid that's been around forever, but we've also seen like kind of like a ramp druid, but it's still running the double combo. I think we've seen both of those so far in the tournament and in recent tournaments as well. What do you guys prefer? Do you guys like to be the druid with the Ancient of Wars, or just the more reliable combo potential?
I think in the mirror match, the Ancient Wars are they're good later. Early on, you'd much rather have like a Dr. Boom because the war is a little susceptible to being silenced. But later on, when you're really in those critical turns where you're playing around combo, it's a card that you can develop a big threat and play around combo at the same time.
Yeah, I have to note that Savitz, when he went 0-5, he actually did not draw walled growth in his any of his 5 games. So right now, because it's actually Life Coach that has walled growth.
Yeah, Life
That's
Coach
gonna
has
be
wild
difficult.
growth and going first, which is quite a bit better.
Yeah, Savitz already kind of looks dejected that there was a wild growth.
Well, at least Life Coach, he doesn't really have a good turn next turn, and then
Incoming innervate,
Yeah,
innervate. Oh.
Well, this is, the wild growth's good, but the rest of your hand is really what the wild growth is supporting. And Savitz, kind of with a fist bump there, knows that when you wild growth into nothing, it's not that great. And the innervate coming into Savitz's hand is really big too.
Oh man.
So this is like a pseudo wild growth we're seeing from Savitz right now. This is like the next best thing, or even something better, because Life Coach, he can't clear this Emperor Thorzan right now.
Yeah, this is just
nothing at all.
better. This is way better than what Life Coach had.
Silence the Emperor. There we go.
That seems like a pretty reasonable action there, compared to nothing.
And now we're gonna get Innervate Dr. Boom.
Yeah, I mean, there is a little risk of Big Game Hunter, but if he doesn't have it, I think the game's just over. So Savitz looks dominant to take this game.
Yeah, and he's also not playing around mind control tech here, because Life Coach, he's a very prolific tournament player, and he's literally never used mind control tech in any of his decks.
Yep, another big benefit to this league is even in deck selection, you know your opponents, you know their tendencies and what they'd like to do. You can study as much as you want, especially against a player like Life Coach, and you just know what they're going to have.
I've also seen, while a lot of players have played other variants of Druid, I don't think I've ever seen Life Coach play anything but like the typical combo Druid. I think largely because he's practiced it so much in his past that maybe he's unwilling to really try anything else that's about as good.
Yeah, I have kind of noticed it's a little bit of a tendency. I mean, I've played a few card games in my time, and especially people that come from like a poker background, they really like to stick to their same stuff and just practice it a bunch, because that's kind of how poker works. It's always the same deck. You're just seeing how well you can play it. And so Life Coach is a player that, just besides a few tech choices here and there, he likes to stick to the same classes, the same shells of decks, and only really changes, like you've seen him pick up Patron Warrior recently. He only really changes when it's completely necessary.
Yeah. That being said, Life Coach does have a few quirks in his Druid sometimes. He was like one of the first players to favor Ragnaros over Cenarius. And he's also one of the only players ever to run nourished in his Druid deck. But these days, his Druid decks have become more standardized. So you'll be seeing like the Sludge Belcher, the Azure Drake, pretty standard overall.
All right, well, Saviz is 1 damage or 1 mana off of lethal, and it seems like drawing is just a safer bet here, as you can play possibly quite a bit more next turn. And I mean, it's just so hard for the losing Druid to do anything.
And this is over with 2 swipes. I mean, there's really no way Saviz can lose from here. No way Life Coach can do anything. He's gonna think through his options, and obviously, I mean, I think a taunt is pretty likely, but Life Coach may see this as a situation where I need to play like he has absolutely nothing and just played boom, go face. I don't know. I mean, there's really nothing here for Life Coach.
Well, even if he does the boom play, what can he expect to draw on the following turn that would save him?
Yeah, there's just nothing. I mean, boom with a combo. Let's see how much damage is that. That's 9, 10 from the hero power, and then you get 20. So you would have exact lethal if you boom hero powered face, top deck combo, and he didn't clear anything or hero power.
Yeah, pretty much Life Coach is like his big thing that he had this game was first of all wild growth, and then he had a reduced double combo with Force of Nature Savage Roar, but he had to use that defensively, so there's pretty much no way for him to get back now.
I was thinking Life Coach might even just innervate the boom, going for that Hail Mary.
All right. Well, he's going to die here just to double swipe. Very clean kill from Saviz. And that puts Team Liquid 2 points ahead of Nihilum. And more importantly, as we kept mentioning...
Saviz is done. 2-0.
Saviz is done. And the Druid of Team Liquid is also done. So quite a few significant things there. And Life Coach is 0-2 right now.
Yeah, so even further behind is Life Coach now, and now Chalky, you're set pretty much. You're gonna win that first place prize.
Yeah, this means everything. It's all over now. Just quit. Silent Storm and Kibler. I know you guys are 4-0 too, but you might as well stop trying. I mean, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Now we've seen, I think both teams have so far played around not running a losing player again to not have him benched. So far that's been 100%, I believe. And I think in the tournament as a whole, that's been a running trend as well. We talked about some mind games and stuff, but generally that's not the case. So now that we're getting kind of in the mid-range where, there's, 2 to 3 points-ish for each team, it kind of becomes much more significant. It becomes much more predictable on what classes you might face.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, in Liquid, it has 2 strong decks and 1 weak deck in the Rogue. So it'll just be up to, if Nairia ends up winning with this Rogue, I think it's going to be clear skies from now on, especially because Show has been doing just insanely well with Patron Warrior and Hunter in tournaments and on ladder recently. So I think if Nairia managed to eke out a win there, I don't think Nihilum will be able to come back. It might just be locked out.
Yeah, I think Liquid's got a pretty huge advantage here. Not only just 2 games up, but they got that weak deck through. And it's going to have to be a comeback from Nihilum if they really want to take this.
What does Nairia's Rogue really want to queue into, though?
I think
so.
Yeah, go ahead.
It kind of wants to queue into another Rogue or Druid, but that's also good for Nihilum.
Yeah.
So it probably, like Monk was about to say, Patron's a pretty good matchup.
Yeah.
So
I think Oil Rogue is the second best deck against Handlock, just stats wise, because it has a 58% win rate against Patron.
Patron, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
What is going to be a Hunter Mirror? It's going to be Show versus RDU. Show just recently dropped his undefeated record, while RDU, he's been struggling a little bit in the tournament, but not too bad. I think it's just a little bit below 50%, which with this many games under his belt so far is very, very respectable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he got the Paladin deck 2 weeks in a row, so kind of drew the short straw, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And that's really what dropped the games for him.
Yeah.
Now,
Both of these players... Yeah, go ahead, Grip.
I've seen this tiger in a few hunter decks recently, but I haven't seen too many people talking about exactly why it's in there. I know once upon a time it was in there. I think right after the Leroy nerf, people were just using tigers to push for that extra damage. Is that really the purpose? Like, is it made a comeback, a Houndmaster target? That's flexible, where you can push for damage instead if you're doing the face game, if you get an aggressive start.
Well, in these hybrid hunters, people actually don't run Houndmaster, and I think the purpose, what I've heard, is that Stranglethorn Tiger is there because Loatheb is a really good 5-drop, so you kind of just want a second Loatheb, and Stranglethorn Tiger is kind of like the closest you can get. I've seen this Tiger being run in Druid decks as well, just being like a second Loatheb straight up, and just being able to use that to guarantee a combo. Meanwhile, if it's in the Hunter deck, it does have B synergy, of course, but it also almost guarantees that 5 damage to your opponent's face.
Yeah, it's morely just about guaranteeing 5 damage to your opponent's face. You know it's going to happen. So it's one of those things that's what Loatheb does really well, and especially against a deck like Patron, where you can't really guarantee all your damage with weak bodies because of the whirlwind effects. You have to find an extra way to get in that damage, especially right before your Savannah High main turn. And Show's really been the one person to play the Tiger. I believe he's had it in his list every single week and really kind of swears by one Tiger in addition to Loatheb.
Yeah, It was not looking too great for RDU until both Animal Companions showed up, and RDU just got by far the stronger one. And now Show is going to be one on the back foot. He does have like the combo that can get him back into the game, which is Knife Juggler Unleash. But with a 4-mana Knife Juggler, it's probably not what you want right now.
Yeah, I would say RDU has a very healthy lead here, especially going into the Loatheb turn. With a lot of charge damage to come behind it. I mean, I can't... From a Hunter player perspective, I really can't see RDU losing here.
I mean, this is a pretty unusual Hunter deck from what I've seen. It has freeze traps, but it is like a face-ish Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, Freezing Trap tends to be the strongest trap in the game just by itself, so if you can play it, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Also, that it's just like the standard hybrid list that has been really popularized by what's his name, Proto Hype, and pretty much it's become like pretty much the most popular Hunter list these days because it not only has like the strongest cards from Hunter, which are the high mains and you can curve out really easily, but it also has like a really good finishers, or just really good finishers in general with Wolf Riders and Archon. Whoa. I think he was gonna go for Unleash the Hounds there actually, but
he was going to.
Awkward.
But you cannot do it anymore.
Well, he could. I mean, no. It's three damage. You have to be really worried about that 3 damage.
Yeah, okay, but I feel like the Wolf Rider accomplishes it better because like the Unleash is just giving your opponent some of that damage back.
Well, I really would have liked to see the Loatheb out last turn from RDU. I feel like it only gets worse as the game goes on, whereas Wolf Rider gets better. As we saw, Show had a really easy time clearing off a Wolf Rider, as opposed to the Loatheb would definitely get his 5 in. And now he has to kind of go for this play, which is a little weak to maybe like a Freezing Trap. He's still very, very far ahead, though, so...
Yeah. I mean, that's the problem with high main. Even though it's such a strong card, it doesn't help you like get back into the game if you're so behind on health.
And he's slightly off of lethal here.
Yeah, it was 1 mana again. If that is a freeze trap, which I'm assuming that it is.
Yeah, so like again, now Loatheb really doesn't do anything. It just dies to a high main. Obviously, you are kind of pinging your opponent down with the Hero Power, but I really think he would just be dead if he had played Loatheb on 5. So basically, RD is just kind of thinking, okay, I'm really far ahead. If I can lose, how does that happen? And
well, probably starts with giving your opponent Mana Crystal. So I'd say that Arcane Golem is probably a bad idea here. Mm-hmm. I think just the Loatheb Hero Power is fine.
Nah, I think I would Arcane Golem here.
Yeah, I think if you just Loatheb, you might give your opponent the opportunity to get lethal in 2 turns instead of like this guaranteed lethal in 1 turn here.
Yep, this plays around Loatheb. You know your opponent Can't really get a Vitality Totem off Shredder or anything. Hunter decks don't play healing. I mean, kill commanding here. Well, now he should have played Juggler, so... I would have liked kill command there, but I think he looks at, even if your opponent plays Lotheb, kill command costs 8, you can't lose, so... That's gonna do it.
Yeah.
And show was, you know, still another turn off, so still needed 2 more turns. But RDU just with a pretty dominant draw here. Everything panned out really well. The Leok versus the Misha lined up really nicely.
The freeze trap, I think, maybe even came as a surprise.
Maybe, but I think you know it's pretty expected in 100x nowadays. A lot of people have been playing it, like Monk said. So.
And also, RDU has been running the same hybrid hunter every single time, and it's included 2 freezing traps. So I don't think it's too much of a surprise. And I think that game, it didn't really come down to the draws even. It was just that Misha versus Leok scenario, which got like a huge tempo play, which got RDU a huge tempo lead, which the show could never come back from. RDU was able to play a Shredder on turn 4, where show was forced to play a Eagle Horn Bow, which got him just so far behind.
All right, well, that's 2 points on the board now for Nihilum, and we are in that stage where really picking the classes is so important. So I mean, let's look at the classes the players have to choose, and maybe we can figure out what they're thinking as well. So Sho has lost both his games, but if he goes up again and actually loses again, then Nyria is forced to play Rogue, which seems like a pretty bad situation. So I mean, it seems like such a tough spot. Like, do you just throw out Rogue now so you have some flexibility next?
You probably do. I mean, it's kind of like that double mind game where if your opponents expect you to be that afraid, they'll just throw out their good Rogue matchup now, which means maybe you should just throw out Show now. But again, if you do get that bench rule in effect, then Rogue has to come out, and then if Rogue continues to lose, your opponents get to play all of their good Rogue matchups in a row, which isn't a huge deal, but it means that they get to kind of hide that Patron deck back and use it against your Hunter later if they can.
Yeah, the other thing to consider is Nihilum actually has a deck remaining that's favored against all 3 of the remaining decks, which is RDU's Rogue, which is just considered a weaker deck. Statistically, it's favored against Patron, favored against the Hybrid Hunter, and also just like an even matchup against Nyria's Rogue. So they might just send out that because it has such a good win rate against the rest of the lineup. And also, if it does get a win against the Hunter or Warrior, then your opponent is locked into Rogue as well.
Yeah.
Seems like a good spot, but what about the other approach? Like, what is really good against Nyria's Rogue just on its own? Like, what is that best matchup?
I mean, Druid traditionally has actually done fairly well against Rogue, despite what a lot of Rogue players like to think and say. Druid does pretty well against it, and you really want that Druid to get a win. The Rogue Mirror, like Monk said, obviously you can just flip a coin pretty much. It's very close. Pretty skill-based from what players say. And we don't really know what Warlock deck this is, but the Zoo deck, I believe, would probably be the best chance against Rogue.
Yeah. And you would probably suspect that it's more likely than not Zoo from Tice, because Life Coach has traditionally been running the handlock, and he's known as one of the best handlock players in the world. So it might not make too much sense to switch off the decks between Life Coach and Tice just to like switch up the players. But then again, that could be a mind game in itself. Maybe they Nihilum, by doing this, they expect Liquid to think that this is indeed a Zoo deck.
Tice is also a very good handlock player himself. I don't think that should be taken away. I mean, these players have played a lot of these decks over and over to the point where I feel even though Life Coach may be one of the best handlock players in the world, I'd still put Tice basically in that range.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
I think the kind of unknown factor of not knowing what type of Warlock it is isn't as big of a deal as it seems. At most, it affects one game, and it only affects it if that one game affects your opponent's mulligans. And sometimes that just doesn't happen. So I feel like, personally, I would never really switch classes for the sake of switching classes if I felt the other player was stronger at it. And yeah, I'm not surprised to see Druid here from Life Coach, like I was talking about. Seemed like a good time to play it. And Show, they kind of maybe expected that, and they're sending him out with Hunter, which
Yep.
seems to be the best matchup they could have gotten.
So it seems like Team Nihilum went with the counterplay, and Team Liquid went with the double counterplay. So Team Liquid is ahead here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Traditionally, Hunter has been a little favored over Druid, and basically the slower your Hunter is kind of to a degree, the better off you are. I think the high mains and the Tiger are really going to help out Show here compared to the more fast Hunter.
Yeah. This is a pretty interesting matchup because both these decks are about getting really strong minions on the board. The Hunter pretty much, it curves out really well. If it does curve out well, like the Mad Scientist is pretty much the best 2-drop in the game, arguably. The Pilot Shredder is arguably like the best 4-drop, and then going to turn 3, Animal Companion is arguably the best 3-drop, and High Main is arguably the best 6-drop. But on the other side of the coin, like if you get a Wild Growth, you change that completely as the Druid player.
Yeah, you're just playing things one turn ahead, so you have the best drops.
Yeah.
Or that Innervate Tharson, perhaps.
Yeah. I believe the decks are kind of switched because it's Show playing the Hunter, I believe, and Life Coach playing the Druid.
Yeah,
it
it's
has to
Show
be
on
that.
bottom.
Okay.
Okay. We're probably seeing the pre-mulligan stage right now. If you're the Druid player, how aggressively do you go for that mana acceleration opener? Do you just mulligan everything for Wild Growth or Innervate here?
I would expect Life Coach to mulligan all 4 of these cards. Swipe is kind of an arguable keep, but it's only really that powerful against the Fast Hunter. He did keep it, though, so...
Not much luck for the Druid here. And in a bad matchup like this, you certainly need it.
Yep.
Oh, that card's terrible.
Yep, so no ramp for Life Coach, and
you actually
it's like
take extra damage from the Leopard Gnome because you can't coin out here when you have a hand this slow.
yeah, Life Coach is one of the players that would almost never coin here, just completely wants the best curve possible. He's willing to take some extra damage and hope he can stabilize, but...
Well, Innervate changes everything quite a bit, but...
yeah, I mean...
There's not two great things to Innervate. Like, there's no Druid the Claw, perhaps, to get a taunt on the field.
Yeah, I feel like a taunt is a lot better than a Shredder because the Shredder is so weak to the Freezing Trap, whereas the taunt, if they play Freezing Trap, you just don't attack, and they can't attack you. You're fine with a stalemate situation, but in this case, the Freezing Trap counters the Shredder really well.
It seems like the hand is just not good enough still. I think I'd go with a Wrath for 1 on the Leopard Gnome here.
Try to get a better draw later on, maybe play a taunt later on. But now this might be slightly punished by the Freezing Trap in Show's hand.
Yep.
Well, if he does Freeze Trap, Life Coach could perhaps coin out the Swipe and nullify the effect of the Mad Scientist.
That's true. Still, though, this Freezing Trap is going to get a 2-for-1. And actually, Show, we did see he ran Snake Trap.
Yeah, he runs Snake Traps, and using the Swipe before the Snake Trap doesn't really work out that great.
So Life Coach definitely knows from watching the previous games that Show does run Snake Trap. So he has to kind of make a guess. If he just attacks with the Pilot Shredder here, maybe he could get a good swipe here. And you just have to kind of guess, like, am I far behind enough to make that kind of play? Because if it's Freezing Trap, it's going to be really bad if a Freezing Trap, if your Pilot Shredder gets back into your hand. Because, again, it's like a 2-for-1, the Innervate plus the Shredder.
Yeah, but we know that the trap was hard cast on turn 3. It's not a random situation. Mm-hmm. So you have to consider whether the Hunter player would actually spend his 3rd turn playing a Snake Trap. And I think that's like actually not the case. Yeah, that basically would have to be a bluff. So I'd say that's quite a lot less likely.
Yep. So Life Coach is going to play it pretty patiently. Just wants to soak up the Freezing Trap with that Shade. That way he can attack freely with the Shredder and hopefully get a really nice swipe here.
Both these players came into today just, undefeated. Probably very high up on how well they were doing, and both of them have kind of stumbled a bit.
Yeah, yep. Both are right now 4-2, and it's just like the player that can first get a win might get himself out of this rut right now.
Yep, one of them, again, it's kind of like the Druid Mirror matchup. One of them is guaranteed to get a win here, so...
Yeah. At the end of this turn, though, Life Coach will actually slightly be ahead on board if he does go for the play that we were suggesting. He would have a 4-1 Shredder against whatever comes out of this Palette Shredder, I believe. Then again, though, like if Lotheb comes down the next turn, Life Coach pretty much has no response whatsoever, unless he has to like face tank it with with his like face basically, and then he can't even like if he draws an Innervate, he would be locked out of that as well. So he basically needs to draw like a 5-drop next turn.
That is a pretty good Shredder result.
Actually, just gonna pass. I wonder. I guess he wants to coin out the Force of Nature to
and use get that frozen.
Oh, that's gonna get punished a lot though.
Yeah, it's like really ambitious, and he is tanking a lot of damage during all of this. So
yeah, that's probably like the best Lotheb you're ever gonna get.
Yeah, I mean, Sho doesn't know it, but he can kind of expect.
Oh my god! Can't play anything. There's literally he can play the coin.
Yeah, he can play the coin. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Life Coach obviously not happy about this.
Yeah. And keep in mind, there's a mad scientist on the field, and there's a freezing trap on the field, so it's even worse than it like even looks.
Yeah, he's dead to a Huffer basically, unless he. I mean, there's just so little you can do here.
Well, what if you freeze the Shade and then kill off your Shredder into the 3/2 creature, hopefully getting a taunt, and then hero powering down the Mad Scientist?
Yeah, I guess that can kind of work, and then you could go for like a swipe Wrath next turn to clear off the board. But again, you're behind every turn, and you're so low that you have to come up with a way that somehow you end up winning the game. Right? It's not about losing the least. It's about you have to somehow turn this board around, combo your opponent out, and win. Yeah. And that's just way too hard. Like.
The other issue is that well, there's the kill command.
And kill command.
That's it.
The other issue is that like Druid is one of those decks that just generally doesn't have any ways to get back into the game. So if Hunter is able to like get a lead in the early game, it's just gonna hold on the whole time.
Well, Team Liquid absolutely rewarded for the double mind games. Sho gets that point on the board, gets out of the small losing streak he started to get going in today's matches, and Life Coach is really on the back end here. Is that 3 matches that he's dropped today?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people were kind of painting him as the carry of Nihilum, 4-0 in the first 2 weeks. Obviously a very strong player. Anybody can kind of have a bad day. They put him on one of the worst decks this week, and it's really not panning out well for them.
Yeah, it seems all to be coming back to that Druid Mirror that we were really hyping up between Savitz and Life Coach. Savitz got a turn 3 Emperor, turn 4 Dr. Boom, and that just like kind of swung both the game around and this whole series around. We're looking at Nihilum, they're just really struggling with that Druid, and it might be even doubtful if they ever get a single win with the Druid.
Well, that can certainly be the case. And right now, I mean, Nihilum, if they have an advantage, it's that they can just use whatever player they want, I believe. I don't think it matters too much at this point, with Team Liquid only needing 2 wins. Sho still has... what does he have?
Patron Warrior left.
Patron Warrior, that's right. Yeah, he failed to get a win with that a bit earlier. Is the Patron Warrior, and then Neria has the Rogue.
Now, we have seen the Patron Warrior struggle a little bit. I mean, Tiddler Celestial kind of tanked with the Patron Warrior in some of Team Celestial's matches. So it's not unheard of for some of these Tier 1 decks to kind of fall. And Rogue is still what we consider kind of a Tier 2. The main issue being that Nihilum still has to win with, Nihilum is definitely behind. They have to win with Warrior and Rogue anyway. So
and 2 other classes,
Right. It's a directly worse situation for them, but it's maybe not unwinnable, but it's definitely in the low percentage chance of winning.
Mm-hmm. One thing is that at this stage, it doesn't really matter if you send out Life Coach, because if he does lose, you're pretty much pinned up against the one deck anyway. That you'd have to beat anyway. So they're really, I feel like as opposed to the last round where there was a lot of strategy with the class picks. I feel like right now there's basically none.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a pretty good point. Yeah, basically, it's about whether Team Nihilum wants to build up their confidence up, like whether they want to send their tier 1 decks first, maybe, versus whether they would just want to get that Druid win out of the way.
Yeah. Now the least amount of games a team has won in a series they lost is 3 so far. Nobody's really gotten, 6-0 or even 6-1. Force and Boys came really close. We were up 5-0 against Tempo Storm, but one of the things is the further you get ahead, now the other team can kind of, match up their matchups in the best way possible, send out their best matchups first and leave the worst for last. So it's rare that we kind of get a huge blowout.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
So
also,
I'd
yeah,
expect Nihilum to get a win or two.
yeah, I believe also that the not only does the match score matter, but the individual game score matter. So I think
That's true.
Nihilum is they're incentivized to like just send out their strongest decks first.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, they are going with Dice, which I guess is a fairly big unknown factor, as we talked about. I'm actually pretty confident they'll be playing Handlock. We'll get to see here in a second.
You think they went for the kind of mind gamey?
I just
Strategy.
feel Tice is so good at Handlock, and Handlock is so good right now that it's kind of a bit of a waste to go with Zoo.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that hand certainly is not the best from Nyria. Unless like Handlock could be okay if Tice is indeed facing Handlock, and Nyria draws into quite a few more things.
Yeah, even against Handlock, I mean, you're okay sapping on turn 4 sometimes, but you really want to have those saps for the mid game to also not only deny the threat but push through damage. Whereas early game, when you sap a giant, you don't actually get to push anything through. They replay the giant. You're in the same situation.
Right. You got to hit those creatures that are either immediately threatening or have already been activated with taunt.
I
Well,
think
it is
yeah.
some sort of slow Warlock deck. Seems to be something close to Handlock.
Yeah, it should be Handlock, I would say.
Yeah, Tice is not known for playing Malagos Lock at all, or even the new Control Warlock that has been popping up on ladder a lot. So I think Nyria can definitely suspect that this is Handlock. And given that Tice doesn't have a 4-drop right now, I think it's looking decent for Nyria actually, because he'll be the one to play a 4-drop first if Tice doesn't top deck a Twilight Drake, and then he can answer Tice's
Watcher.
4-drop.
He has the Watcher Silence if he needs it.
It's true.
Yeah, this is one of the few matchups I think that you would be okay silencing a Watcher. I know players like Life Coach only play 1 Owl, and Life Coach has said you never silence Watcher unless it's lethal.
Yeah.
So some players kind of play by that philosophy. Obviously, with 2 Owls, you can be a lot more flexible, especially against a deck like Rogue, where potentially one of the few silence targets you can get is like Edwin Van Cleef.
Well, I think it's okay just to leave it out there, so
Oh.
you have some kind of option to deal with the threat from the rogue. I think, yeah, very good play from Tice. I mean, you just develop that answer already on the board. So next turn, if he still gets nothing, he can at the very least answer the rogue with a silence and
Yeah,
into a tap or a mortal coil.
That was actually like a pretty huge top deck from Tice, that Mortal Coil, because it'll actually allow him to deal with a Valley Teacher, and you can't let this Valley Teacher get out of control because you don't have like great AoEs against the 1 health minions of your opponent. And Nyria also, he sees that possible silence play, he just like goes for the attack on the Ancient Watcher, basically saying that, hey, I can just preemptively hit that for 1, so I just kill off my opponent's entire board next time if he does go for the Owl play.
Yeah, pretty heads up play from him. I think it was, just a lot of experience with the rogue class, knowing I'm probably going to hit this eventually, whether it's because he silences or not. I might as well play around the worst case scenario and just be ready to deal with this owl that comes out.
Oh my god.
Coining the tap into an Emperor Tharson when you don't have the mana anymore.
Yeah, I can definitely see where Tice was coming from, though. He has
Yeah.
at least like 4 drops, and okay, at least he top decks that.
Yeah, I think
it has to be a little funny though from his position. That's like the one card you didn't want to see on that turn.
Well, the Belcher was really what he was digging for, and so he did kind of get rewarded in a way after seeing kind of that draw that he was like, oh man, could have had that. But
Yeah.
This guy's tough.
I mean, the Rogue hand looked bad at the start, but he's really drawn into a lot of nice stuff, and with the 2 saps hanging back along with Tinker's Flurry, he's gonna have a lot of ways to push through going into the late game.
Yeah, typically the biggest strength of Handlock, I would say, is like the strong turn 4 drops, but we haven't really seen that from this Handlock at all. It's basically just playing like a regular deck, and against a Rogue, a deck that like can play to its strengths, especially with the Tinker Sharpshooter Roll and Blade Flurry in hand, it just feels like the Handlock is just not doing very well at all.
Well, he's still not going to be doing too well, but he has some very nice discounts.
Yeah, if Nyria kind of walks into this the wrong way, I mean, double Molten Sun Fury Healbot is a pretty easy way to seal a game up from a behind position. Handlock is one of the decks that if you fall behind, but you fall behind in the right way, you're still fine.
Oh, that's an excellent Shredder drop. I mean, that card's already in the deck.
Yeah, this is getting really close to just being dead. In fact,
actually, yeah. What can you play that actually survives that Blade Flurry and Sap combo? Like nothing that like plays around both. There's no answer here from the Handlock.
well, the Flurry and the attack are going to be worth 9 damage or 10 damage with double spell power, and you have 8 on board plus 3 from the Tinker, so that's only 21 if you have to sap. It becomes 4 higher if you can fit in the Deadly, so that's 25. And Dr. Boom Sun Fury, oh, if he doesn't go for the Sun Fury, he is dead. And he's going to be dead by 24 damage, I would say.
Yeah, I think you're right.
If I did math correctly, that's 11 on the board, and it's going to be a 6 damage dagger, plus the 1 from Spell Power, that's 24 damage, that's enough.
Yeah, and I think it actually came down last turn to the fact that Blood Mage Thalnos was dropped from the Shredder. I believe like if Blood Mage Thalnos wasn't dropped, Tice wouldn't have gone for the Iron Beak Owl. He would have gone for the Sun Fury instead.
Yep. I think he was holding on to the Sun Fury, realizing he needed it for the double Molten Healbot turn. So.
And there we go. Team Liquid is on the verge of having the most dominant victory in the entire tournament so far. Yep. They're up 5 points to Nihilum's 2. And, well, what's the last deck? It's Grim Patron Warrior. How bad could that possibly be?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good deck, apparently, so...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if on the other side of the coin, we have seen a lot of players failing a lot of times in a row with the deck. I know Zalay struggled to get a win with the deck, even though he's known for the deck in the first week of Archon League. Kalento also failed to get a win with the deck in the first week. I think he went 0-4 with it, or at least 0-3. And we obviously saw last week Tidler having some troubles with it as well. So yeah, it's still possible.
Yeah.
Now, tilt is like rarely an issue in reality. I mean, this is a card game. There's no like mechanical stuff. You can calm yourself down very easily and take your time. But with Patron Warrior deck that is time affected, and it's a deck that, like you talked about, Zalay, these players, we saw a highlight clip of it earlier. You literally miss lethal because you weren't quick enough, and that can really put you in a bad mindset going forward if you do drop that first game in kind of a pretty tilting way where you played bad and you're like blaming yourself, and that can affect you going into later games.
Yeah, I think it happened to Zalay at least twice. I'm actually thinking 3 times in the last 2 weeks where he basically would have won. He basically had lethal, but he just ran out of time during a turn and ended up in him losing after the opponent came back in the game. But in every case, it was such a ridiculous sequence of events. It was like such a difficult turn that required so much animation time. I mean, you still can't blame him for it. So that's what makes the deck so unique, and yeah, I think it's really cool. But I think Sho is capable of playing the deck right on that highest level. It's just we'll have to see if those tough situations come up, and maybe the rope is going to be the winner.
Yeah,
would be an interesting way to go out. Sho is actually the only person on Liquid to drop a game so far, and this is almost like, if this were to become a long drawn out series, it's reminiscent of the Fortune Boys versus Value Town match last week where Savitz and Iria 2-0'd easily. I mean, Dog and Kidler 2-0'd easily, but there was one player on the team that, couldn't seem to find a win. And so if that becomes the case, it is something that can play into your mental state.
But the difference between that series and this series was that Value Town's last deck was mid-range Paladin.
There was a big difference.
Patron Warrior. Like, just worlds different, basically. Like a tier 1 deck versus maybe even like a tier 3 deck, some would argue.
Yep. So you have to be feeling good going into the last... you have 4 match points with your most comfortable deck, arguably the most powerful deck in the format, so...
Yeah, so I think, again, we said that it's very easy for Nihilum to get like the first 2 wins against the last deck because they can just queue their best matchups in. And Handlock is, of course, the best matchup against Patron Warrior. Of course, the games do count in terms of game score. So Nihilum, even if they don't win, they just want to get as many wins out there as possible.
Yep.
Now, what's your take here? I feel like often I think you want to go first as Handlock just because you get out those big threats over and over. But you certainly don't want the Grim Patron Warrior having that coin.
You want to go first, I'm pretty sure. Going first is just so big for the Handlock because you don't have that awkward turn 3 where you either have to coin out something or do something like play a Watcher, which is really just a blank turn. So you'd rather have the initiative to just slam that giant on the board early.
Even though it means having the coin on the Grim Patron Warrior?
I mean, we've seen that not matter too much in a lot of games, but it does kind of accelerate their combo turn. They can coin out Emperor sometimes. It can come back to get you, but I would say, in general, you want to go first.
Yeah. And compared to the last game where Tice pretty much drew fairly dead without getting any 4-drops the entire game, this game, I think he has like pretty much everything he wants. He has 2 AoEs for the Grim Patrons that will inevitably come. He'll have like a silence for this Acolyte of Pain. He even has like all these 4-drops. Like, he has his choice of what to do here.
I don't know if there's much of a choice. I think the Hellfire also triggers 2 cards on the Acolyte, by the way. I think the choice has to be if he wants to try to push with the Mountain Giant or if he wants to silence the Acolyte.
Yeah, I agree. And also, like, you probably don't want to use Hellfires here because you want to save them for the Grim Patron Warrior. That's for the Grim Patron, rather. And that's exactly what Hellfire is for. Players, like, you might not draw into your second or your first Shadow Flame, so I think it's definitely an excellent decision to like save that for now. And just Tice, he values denying cards off this Acolyte as much as possible, because if he just went for like a Mountain Giant play or a Twilight Drake play, something like Execute into possibly a Whirlwind would punish him a lot, which is exactly what we see in Show's hand.
Yeah, even just like a slam or a weapon, getting the 3 draws off that Acolyte is the most important thing. The Owl basically denies 2 cards, which is, if you put it that way, that's great.
Okay, let's get that Execute triggering minion off the board and play our biggest thing. Good stuff, but it's still going to get punished by that Execute.
Still an Execute triggering minion.
Yeah.
And the Gnomish is a pretty nice top deck.
Yep. Fills up your mana, cycles your deck, and you have board presence.
Yep.
Yeah, we saw in the last game between Life Coach's Patron and Savitz's Handlock that Life Coach really valued getting minions on the board because it had the potential to get his minions damaged and then draw a lot of cards with Battle Rage, which I think is like almost necessary in this matchup. And oh my god. Well, you can't play both of these on the same turn, but
what if you play them really fast?
Yeah, what isn't your APM high? I mean, it's a really difficult split. This is like a 7-10 split of Mountain Giants here, but
if anyone can do it, maybe a professional player on Team Nihilum, right?
Yeah, I mean, Tice isn't a former StarCraft player, and actually Show was a former professional StarCraft player, but he was actually known for having like the least APM out of all professional StarCraft players. So I don't think either of these players could pull that off right here.
Oh man. All right. Well, if that play is out, what is the play then?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like, I wonder what Lotheb really does here. I guess the one thing this really does is it guaranteed contest an Emperor. Now,
maybe the other
Giant-
thing is, yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe he's planning for that double giant turn next turn, which will be pretty huge.
yeah, that's true, for sure. I was thinking you could just play the giant. I really like what you said with the double giant. Makes a lot of sense. But the one thing giant would be a little susceptible to would be like an Emperor coin execute, which could, really just take over the game. Now that is something you can't really play around all the time, but I feel like in this case, along with setting up for your double giants, it was, doable for him.
Double giant. He does have some clears, but it involves removing a few combo pieces from his hand, which isn't something you really want to do.
Now, how much damage is this? It's he can go Warsong, Ghoul, Frothing. The Frothing is 4 from the unstable Ghoul running in, and then you get a Whirlwind twice on 4 minions. So I guess he has 16.
No, you would Death Bite face first to
Yeah,
5
of course.
minions.
Okay, so you'd have 17. Yeah. So he's 1 off. He's 3 off. If he had 1 more mana, he could also fit in the Whirlwind, which would do it. But see, now this is really interesting to me. I guess. Yeah, I guess he's just kind of. I don't know. I don't like this too much. He's setting up for a longer game, but he also kind of dropped the Warlock lower.
Yeah.
Which means Moltens can be enabled. That can create a situation where you can't really win. But, I mean, Hellfire is okay here, but from Tice's perspective, he can't set up a taunt if he does that.
Yeah, exactly. I think Show's plan maybe here is to exactly bait out that Hellfire, because it's pretty much one of the only things you can do to clear this board. And then from then on...
Can he win?
Yeah. And then, from then on, Tice, he only has 4 mana left, and he's played already, 3 of the 4, quote-unquote, 4 drops in his deck. So he doesn't have a lot to, fill in with the rest of the board. And so if he doesn't have, an Argus or a Sun Fury, then he's setting up for, the Warsong Frothing Whirlwind turn.
So you Hellfire Molten here, and is that going to be it? Can Show end it? He gets 2 damage, and he gets a Slam for an extra 1, so it's 3, and he gets a Whirlwind, and I don't think that's even close. He needs another Whirlwind effect, or else he's just dead. Yeah, Tice did the math real quick, and he's like, I don't think an extra minion really matters. So... I mean, Show's gonna go for it, I guess. I mean, it's all he really has. He gets an extra 1 damage. He gets an extra 2 damage off that Armorsmith draw. So he's gonna get +6 and then +2. And that's not it. That's only 10. So... he can't stay alive, I don't think.
Well, he can stay alive from his side of the board by running the Frothing into a Molten Giant.
Can he? No, he's still dead.
Well, he's still dead, but he has to assume his opponent has nothing, right?
No, he'd be dead to board still.
Oh, right, he doesn't clear the Giants, that's right.
So he's 3 off, and I feel like that Death Bite use was a little premature. If he had saved the Death Bite and maybe just gone for Unstable Ghoul Patron, maybe with the extra Whirlwind effect, he could have taken it. But then he'd be a little susceptible. No, because then Show would have, or Tice would have just Dark Bombed the 1 Patron and then played a Belcher and been fine. But
Right. So very tricky turns, but it seems like in every outcome the handlock was going to come out ahead there.
Yeah.
And well, the handlock came out ahead there. Tice is out. He gets his 2 wins, and it's on RDU to get his last, and Life Coach to get his 2.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think with the play that Show did, if maybe he top decked a second Whirlwind, he would have had lethal there. So at least he gave himself a way to win that game right there.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you got to take a lot of risks with Grim Patron. I'm always surprised on how aggressive some of these Grim Patron players do play the Warrior deck, and I don't know. I kind of liked it. I kind of like it. Like some things I noticed, like the Death Bite hit on the Lotheb, leaving it at 1 life, getting the 2 damage in, not the trade. Just those little things, I think, really add up and make the difference between the good Grim Patron player and the very good So giving him some opportunity to win. Doesn't get it, but he's got at least 3 more chances here.
Yeah. At least we're not going to get a 6-2 here, and pretty much it tie if Show wins the next game, it at least ties up with pretty much everyone else. Like the worst case scenario.
Yeah, Nihilum will still be in fine position even if they lose this match. They'd be 2-1 with pretty good tiebreakers. Unless someone else really gets like a 6-0 performance, then or 6-1 even. But yeah,
I think that'll happen by the end of all the season. I think we'll see one of those. It's just going to be like a bad day for like one. Yeah, because what happens is like when you get,
everybody
like,
has
really
to
wrecked,
lose twice.
Yeah, but when you get like really wrecked at the start, like the team morale is really low, and maybe like the player who you put up at the end has
you get your best matchup possible in game 6 if you're down 0-5.
Yeah, that's true.
One thing to note is that if Liquid wins this next game, they'll actually pull ahead to second place in the league because they'll be tied in terms of match scores with Nihilum, but they'll win in the head-to-head.
Yep. So, yeah, Team Liquid, I mean, kind of coming from middle of the pack, they get their shot at almost kind of the champs who are in first place right now, and maybe can just bring them down and tie up. And like Monk said, you have the head-to-head. Suddenly you're in second place out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. The opposite could happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is really interesting because Life Coach is being sent out as a Druid, and typically you would say that Rogue is a more favored matchup against Patron Warrior.
Yeah, I think this comes to personal experience. Obviously, you hear from tons of different players, tons of different opinions, and everyone kind of has their own anecdotal experiences. They have their own kind of play style, and they get their own results. And they're kind of like, I like this matchup more than I like this matchup. And especially when one player is playing one thing and another player is playing another thing, you can kind of get into a bit of an argument. And I think in these situations, whoever is more like assertive about them liking their matchup more basically gets to go first. Like, I mean, I wouldn't really say no if my teammate wanted to go first unless it was a huge deal. Like we had Rogue versus Priest left or something, and we chose to go something else. I mean, so it's player preference, and I guess Life Coach really wanted to get this matchup out.
Yeah, I think Life Coach also is feeling a bit down, but he knows he's got it. He knows it's about time he's going to get a win here. So maybe that's kind of playing into it a little bit. A few of the tilt mechanics, maybe.
Yeah, Innervate Shredder is pretty good against Warrior. It's really not that amazing because of Fire War Axe, but a lot of patrons have been cutting down to one of those actually. Yeah. So
I believe Show is actually at the forefront of cutting one Fire War Axe, so it's like very likely that Show won't be able to deal with this, and in fact he can't.
Yeah, so pretty. I mean, you could see Life Coach considering that, and really going to pay off. He's probably going to get a lot of damage through it, but ooh.
Inner Rage top deck.
Yeah.
Life Coach is a bit surprised there.
I mean, that's normally not a huge deal to just deny a small amount of damage, but with such a weak hand from Life Coach, it could end up mattering a lot.
Yeah.
It is a weak hand right now, but the way I see it, it's one Innervate away from being like the best hand imaginable.
Yeah. I mean, even then, you really do want to draw those combo pieces later. Early on, they don't really do anything for you, so...
Yeah. It's a pretty bad hand, but the plays so far have been pretty strong still.
I think one thing that Show has to consider is that in recent tournaments, such as the Vulcan League, Life Coach has been running Druid with both Harrison and Ooze. So first of all, this might be the reason that Life Coach picked Druid instead of going for the Rogue, which is most people regard as a more favorable matchup, and also that Show just has to play around those cards.
Ooh, that Whirlwind. Pretty nice draw if he wants to clear off that Shade.
Yeah.
Do you think there's much reason to buff a Frothing a little bit here? Probably not.
No, makes it a little weak to Wrath, and...
Possibly the Keeper if you're too greedy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely don't go too greedy, but... I don't know, he's thinking about it. I mean, it would enable Battle Rage if you hit it at least once.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say you only hit it once if you're going to hit it. That makes it a 5-3. That's good enough. You know, contest Belcher. it almost contests Druid of the Claw.
Oh, he's got to choose.
Yeah. How bad is it really though if this Frothing Berserker gets wrathed? I mean,
Yeah, because your opponent can Wrath Hero Power anyway, so and only take 2. So I think it's fine to hit it once. He's actually just going to save the charge, which I find pretty interesting.
Well, it's kind of going to work because if the Shade does go for the kill on the Frothing, it's all right. He doesn't even do that. Okay.
Well,
Interesting.
We're going to see Patience here, I would assume. He could just go for a little bit of a more passive play and get like a Battle Rage, yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense when you're setting up for Patron plus the Whirlwind. And 2 Patrons, I think the Druid could very easily deal with that because he already has a minion on the board, first of all. But 4 Patrons is kind of like the breaking point.
Well, you know there's no Wrath, right? And you know there's no Swipe, or else he would have used them last turn, most likely. So you could have kind of like sniffed that out and just gone for it. But
this is going to be very dangerous, though.
Right, this is crazy dangerous. That's 21 damage. And I don't think Sho can do anything about it.
Well, he's got quite a bit of damage himself.
Yeah, he's going for
Yeah,
the
but
win
he's
play.
dead. Life coach, like fist pumps. He knows he's won. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And you know, Druid not even getting an Ooze or a Harrison, it just takes a win. I guess this is what Druid can do sometimes, but
Crip said this was the dream hand. I guess it was. The Shade coming up huge, though. I mean, he drew that when he had nothing else to play on turn 4, and it enables this combo to really deal the killing blow, or else we'd see taunts and armor smiths, and no way Life Coach would be able to finish. He hits it right at the sweet spot.
Yeah, it really goes to show how well Life Coach knows this matchup. Just saving all these cards when it's so tempting to get good trades with them.
yeah. And right now, Sho is left with a Patron Warrior, and it's against a Rogue, which is an unfavorable matchup, and then it's against another Patron Warrior. So I don't know. It's getting a little scary for Team Liquid right now.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, and it is, I mean, kind of going back to the whole tilt thing, I mean, maybe both of those are winnable games. I think the Handlock one might have been winnable, and I'm sure Sho is thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you kind of lose and you think there was something you could have done differently, you're like, man. And often that's the case with Patron Warrior.
Are you worried for your team right now, Monk?
I'm
You need to prep talk a little bit.
I'm a little worried, but I think Sho, he's been one of like the best players in Black Rock Mountain so far, and he's like one of the best players with Patron Warrior. So like we can't doubt him really. Like we know he's going to play his best, and I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem.
Yep.
All right. What can we expect here?
Rogue.
Rogue.
Probably.
Yeah.
This is the best
Unless
matchup
they-
again. Yeah.
Unless they truly believe it's unfavored, which I think RDU might actually think that, because I know the Rat talked to him a lot about that, and the Rat's a Patron player, very outspoken, thinks Patron's favored against like everything. So,
Okay. I know about that, yeah. And also, the other thing to consider is that Sho is known for running Harrison Jones in his Patron Warrior. So, I don't know, maybe that like favors him actually in both these matchups, both the Patron Warrior Mirror and the Rogue.
Yep. I think it is a little bit of personal preference. I mean, even if you do consider Rogue favored, like you said, it's 58%. If you consider your Patron play better, maybe you can consider that maybe 50 to 55%. So it's, and depending on tech choices, anything could really happen. So we are going to see the mirror match come out first. I think this would have made for an intense game 11, but hey, we'll take it now.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I think RDU has been at least on the first week in their opening matches. He was like the end player. It was like on him to get the last few wins.
It was
and
like
he
that
did.
last week too.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So
Well, I guess
every
he's
week,
done that twice now. RDU is like the the last guy you send up, overtime. Send out your dude to get those last goals in. All right. The Fiery War Axe. Was that a keep from Show?
It like judging from the spectator screen, it looked like he threw it away but got it back immediately, which it doesn't make too much sense since
No.
I'm pretty sure Show only runs one Fiery War Axe.
Right.
Well,
Would you consider? Is there some merit to actually keeping it though? It feels like it doesn't actually kill too much.
especially just equipping it instantly? Like, I think he's gonna have to end up going face with it a bit, maybe. Like,
But you wouldn't really want to activate a Battle Rage on your opponent for nothing.
no, you wouldn't.
Yeah, I guess it contests like the acolytes, it contests the unstable ghouls. Like Life Coach couldn't play anything these few turns. If he had like the unstable ghoul acolyte turn 2 and 3 combo, he might have played that, and now Show has the lead on the board.
Okay, well maybe that's just how you have to play the warrior, man.
Yeah, now he goes face.
Fiery War Axe to deny your opponent from getting his lead.
Yeah, I'm a little worried now for Show actually because he has the Death Spite into a Coin Emperor Thorzen, which is pretty scary.
Yeah. Oh, there's always the rogue. But the Emperor Thorson does seem to pull his weight. Really just so ridiculously strong when you have the coin. You get that extra card, you get him a turn earlier. And, I mean, one turn earlier is just such a big deal.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see him save this Deathbite charge and just coin out an Emperor. Really no threat to clear off the 2-4. Oh. I don't think I'd like this, to be honest. Your opponent has the axe out. You're just... I guess he's going to Whirlwind as well. But you're still a little weak to, like... I mean, Show's going to be able to clear this off.
Yeah, and not only that, even if Show clears it off, okay, I guess Life Coach has the Emperor next turn, but he doesn't have like too many combo pieces in that Emperor with the Emperor.
Yeah, he could have gotten such a sick combo. With you set up the unstable ghoul, you set up a patron, you whirlwind the patrons, you can even cruel taskmaster. I mean, it just seems so much better to just kind of wait one more turn.
Well, the thing is, like, can Show even clear this?
I guess not, because of how the two of them are at 3 health. So he can't use... Yeah, he actually has to leave up 1. Now,
And that
is that
one
going to be...
is going to be much more than 1.
I think that, yeah, like, is that just enough? Because you can make another one with Cruel Taskmaster, which is incredibly important. And then you can set up at least one unstable ghoul to kind of protect them. So maybe I kind of misjudged this, and there was...
Maybe you could even Battle Rage this turn. I mean, you don't need that many more cards in this position.
Yeah, well, you definitely would do that over Armoring, I think. It's just, you could even just play both unstable ghouls. I'm not sure if that's good, though. One might be plenty.
Execute another Battle Rage.
Yep, and it looks like Life Coach, with this really aggressive play, just Emperor chilling back, has such a commanding lead now.
Yeah, we saw Show. He saw that last unstable ghoul. If that unstable ghoul didn't come down, he'd be able to deal with this fairly easily. But now it's a really dire situation.
Yeah,
There's
you can
actually
tell-
like, there's like no real way to deal with like, even if he had the perfect hand, there's like no way to deal with this. He needs, at this point, I feel like he needs like a Warsong Frothing combo to come back into this game.
Well,
Yeah,
he has to, like... He has to slam a Grim Patron, doesn't he?
But
Slam doesn't really do
for
anything.
what purpose?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Oh, man. Yeah,
Oh
this
yeah,
matchup
no,
just
the
gets-
Deathbite has 2 charges. No, I thought the Deathbite had 1 charge.
Now, if he had something like Monk mentioned, a Warsong or a Frothing, a few pieces of the combo, I think you could realistically see him go for just a reverse combo kill. But he doesn't even have like a single piece besides maybe Whirlwind. You can, yeah, it looks like he's just going to try and make his own patrons to counter this.
This is gonna get pretty crazy.
You should Whirlwind, right? Because I
Killed
think
the 2-1.
yeah, the 2-1 challenges one of your patrons, which is a big deal. And now
Everyone is getting in here in this game, guys.
Yeah, this is interesting, to say the least.
What now?
And another factor is just like the card advantage that Life Coach has, and not even that, but the potential card advantage that Show does not have, because he just has Battle Rage and Slam, and he just
Wow.
you have to expect this board is going to be cleared next turn. So Battle Rage is at most probably going to draw like 1 or 2 cards.
Life Coach just got more ways to create more patrons.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty nuts. Like, now he can make more patrons. He can make 4 patrons, right? Yeah, he can make another set of 4 patrons and, like, another unstable ghoul, even. And at that point, it's like, if Show couldn't deal with the last version of that, I guess the only consideration now is how much you play around the reverse combo, like the big frothing kill.
Well, it has to be a really big frothing kill, because you already know he doesn't have much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a frothing would do a lot of damage. You get a whirlwind on like 7 and then 9 things. So if he had the frothing and the war song, that'd be pretty close.
Yeah, but on the other side of it, because we see Life Coach's hand, we know that Show is dead next turn because of the war song and the frothing berserker in his hand right now.
Does he have space?
That's true. That's a good point.
I think he will, because he can just trade in.
Yeah, he can trade in 3 and then... Yeah, he can trade in 3 of
could have
his...
slammed one down. Actually, why didn't he slam one down?
Yeah, he should have for the card. Oh, I guess he can Battle Rage for 3 instead.
It's not going to do much.
He could... Oh, man. It's so brutal.
All Life Coach has to do is war song, frothing,
Yeah,
unstable.
he just has to sequence correctly, basically. And... I mean, we kind of hypothesized about this, but suddenly it seems like Nihilum's in the advantage if Life Coach spots this and wins this game.
Yeah. I definitely expect him to. There's no reason
he's
to
gotta
spot
spot
it.
Yeah. So now he just has to trade 1 in. You can trade the 2/2 into a 3/3
Yeah, just to spawn more targets.
just for more damage. Yeah. That should do it. You should go face with the 3/1. I think he costed himself some damage there. But it shouldn't really matter. Yeah, this gives him more damage. I would have done this in the first place, but...
That's definitely enough, right?
Yeah, it has
Is
to be.
it? No, it's 1 off.
Yeah.
He sequenced it wrong and it's 1 off.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. That's
1 over.
16. Is
I
it
think
1
it's 18.
over? Oh, because
I
it
think it's
spawned
1
the extra
over.
patrons.
Well, we're gonna wait and see the
It's
verdict.
16 or 18.
I think it's 18. I think you guys
Okay.
are wrong. I think he could.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
He could have sequenced it better, but if it's lethal, it's lethal, right?
That would have been so bad if it was bad. But
Yeah. Because on the flip side, if he missed lethal there, Show, if he drew a Warsong Commander, he
Yeah.
would have won.
he had 18. Yep.
Yeah, some pretty
Crazy.
crazy back and forth stuff in those patron mirrors. But man, Life Coach kind of redeemed himself a little bit there in the very clutch moments where his team was really down. He picked up the wins, and now the series is tied. Remember, guys, this is best of 11, so we are literally on match point. And RDU has been a successful closer twice now. So Team Liquid, from on the verge of having the most dominant performance in Archon Team League's history, is now perhaps going
About
to
to have
lose.
Yeah, this would be the biggest comeback, right?
Well, didn't Forsen Boys come back?
We came back from 1 to 4. This was 2 to 5. So I guess it's the exact same, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we came back from 2 to 5 as well.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So this match we talk about, it's most people would agree that it's favorable for Rogue, and stats wise, it is favorable for Rogue. But maybe it all changes when Show has a Harrison Jones in his patron deck. it's definitely something that RDU will have to be considering, and that might make his plays just generally weaker.
I feel like it's not too frequent that the rogue just sits with a weapon against the patron anyway. Like it does so against a lot of other decks, but most of the games that I see unfold, that generally isn't the case.
Yeah. You also have to remember that not only did Show he didn't win with his Patron Warrior the past few games, but he also lost against Freeze Mage in the first game, a matchup that he was like supposedly very favored against.
That's
true.
true.
So I think Show has gone from 4-0 in 2 weeks to 0-5 this week.
Yeah, to potentially 4-6 for like just the entire his entire record.
Yeah, he's negative now with a chance to go even. So it can change just like that in this league.
Yeah, so guys, this is Match Point, and if you want to talk about this league, just please tweet with the hashtag ATLC, and you can have your little tweet show up on the screen. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, if you tweet at ATLC with your favorite moment of the tournament, you can actually get $25 extra when you spend $25 on Amazon coins. Yeah, we'll talk about that at the end of the series here some more.
Pretty sick. So, Chalky, is Preparation Sprint good for the Rogue in this matchup?
You know, look, I haven't played a lot of Rogue in a while, but I feel like you probably can't keep that. Maybe you can. I'm not too sure.
I've seen rogues keep this against like the very slow decks. I just don't know where you place Grim Patron in that range. Like it's not really a slow deck.
Exactly. Yeah, you definitely keep it against like Control Warrior and like Priest, but yeah, I don't know about this.
Yeah, he's gonna keep it. So I trust RDU more than I trust myself here. I haven't played much Rogue, but against the Rogue, the Patron is a bit more of a slow style. You're mostly looking to set up for a combo, in which case that Emperor draw is really nice. However, I have seen some people just play out that frothing really aggressively, which I don't like that much, but hey, they have experience with the matchup, so we're going to have to see how Show prefers to play it.
Instant passive play there.
Yeah, Show's hand is actually looking pretty awesome right now. Deathspite, Patron, Emperor, Acolyte, like these are like exactly the cards that you want in the early game.
Right.
Yeah, so now's really a big moment to see if he will just throw out a frothing.
I feel like Acolyte is pretty good here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What's the worst that can happen with it? It dies to a deadly poison? Fine.
If you look at the context of his hand, he can very easily... He's a war song away from having a very threatening combo. And so like I would be completely fine playing out the game that way. That's how I would prefer to go for it.
Alright, well, he's only going to get 2 extra cards. So he's going to start the turn with 10 cards and then play a coin Emperor Tharson.
Well, he can't. He's 1 man off.
Oh, it's 4th turn. Oops.
Yep. So we'll probably see... I mean, you do... Deathbite is nice here. You can, like, Deathbite to kind of clear off the teacher, but...
Whoa.
You can see something like Acolyte, Whirlwind, Coin, Execute.
Mm-hmm.
That looks like what he's going for here. This saves the Deathbite, which is a really critical card for not only the combo, but just clearing off things later in the game.
What do you think about just the Inner Rage Execute, so you save the coin and can Emperor next turn?
Yeah, and the Whirlwind is a pretty good card to save, too, when you're going for that combo. Compared to the Inner Rage, it provides more damage, usually. So I think I would have liked that more, yeah.
Yeah, I think what Show was doing was he was planning for RDU's turn 5, like either Lotheb or an Azure Drake. He was planning to use the Deathbite on turn 5. But now, because of the prep sprint, he doesn't really have that luxury.
So it looks like RDU's really afraid of these Acolytes, drawing extra cards. Like he respects something like a Cruel Taskmaster here. Doesn't want to give Show a good play. Which,
well, he's right in doing so far.
Yeah, it turned out pretty well for him. So.
All right.
Ooh, is he just gonna go for it?
Patron Inner Rage.
He is 1 war song off having basically the God Hand. Yeah. So if he just waits a little bit, I'd really just like to see him maybe armor up Axe Face Next turn, you're going to Emperor and get rid of the second charge of the Axe. Later, you can develop that Despite, and then if you draw that War Song, you win. I mean, there's really nothing more to it.
I feel like the Despite is just better than the Fairy War Axe armor up, though. It just gives you a cleaner Emperor next turn.
Well, you want to save the Despite second charge, and if you play the Despite early, you'll basically never get this Fiery War Axe out of your hand.
Okay.
So this is basically just getting 6 extra damage in, I would say.
Also, interesting to note that RDU, he has 2 Violet Teachers in his deck, and that's typically like not too great of a card against Patron Warrior. And what I've heard is like from a lot of players is that the Violet Teacher is generally better than the Pilot Shredder, so you usually run 2 of those instead of 1 of the Pilot Shredder. But if you're concerned about Patron Warrior, you run 2 of the Pilot Shredder and 1 of the Violet Teacher. And I think one of the reasons that RDU is running 2 Violet Teachers is because he's less likely to face a Patron Warrior in this format, in the Archon team format. So that might, like, because of this format, it might be hurting him here. And wow, even
God.
So that's like exactly the God Hand.
If
Still needs the War Song, though.
Yeah, I think RDU's best shot in this game is for Show not to draw a War Song. As sad as that is, like, one of the biggest issues for RDU here is he hasn't done any damage. Show's sitting at a comfortable 32. You know, he's completely
With board
fine.
control. Yeah.
And the South Sea's gone, a Prep's gone. It's not like you're afraid at all. So,
Not only that, but there's not too many active cards here for RDU. Like, he can't develop his board much further. And the only thing he can really develop is basically, like, he can get more tokens and he can get like 1 Blood Mage Thanos, both of which are just really weak to patrons. And also weak to Frothing Berserkers, actually.
yeah.
I think that's still the play, though. I think you have to just play out all the stuff that you can. Either Blood Mage and then Sap, or Blood Mage and then Eviscerate. Like, just one of those has to happen here.
Sap. Oh, man. You could go for, like, Sap Healbot here just to develop aggressively.
I was going to go for the fan.
And he does not want any tokens, which I almost don't like here because it feels like you're in such desperate shape. Your opponent got an 8-card Emperor. Like, do you really think you can just grind him out?
Yeah. Well, one of the criticisms of Trump when he went 1-5 in the Archon Team League last week was that he didn't take enough risks. He played it like too safely, and that just might be the mentality of what happens when you're in a team league format and you just don't want to let your team down. You just want to play as safe as possible, so you don't look like an idiot like on the to your team, basically.
Yeah,
He's burning some combo pieces here.
Yeah,
though.
again, I dislike this. Like, this is almost never going to win you the game because of Blade Flurry. I think with double frothing, what he's thinking is, I still have enough with the Despite, with the Task, with the Inner Rage. If I draw the War Song, I'm still fine. So I might as well hedge on this play as well, make him have the Flurry, and if he doesn't, I win. But obviously, you know, he does have Flurry, so...
Yeah. The other thing this does is it forces RDU, I guess, to not develop this turn. So maybe Show has more opportunities to draw into his combo later on.
Well, yeah. It's just he had his combo, and he just needs War Song, but he doesn't have any card draw anymore either. So his chance of developing the combo every turn isn't really very high.
Yeah, I wonder if we could see something like another Patron play from Show now that 1 Flurry's out. Like, I wouldn't like that much. I feel like, again, he's at 25, he's going to 27. You've seen a lot of damage cards out of RDU. You're sitting pretty well. You can probably just wait this out and draw War Song. And
Oh, playing around Harrison Jones here.
yeah, that's interesting because I feel like Show would have done it already.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, it only cost him maybe, like, you know, 1 damage in the grand scheme of things, maybe 2 at most, but it is a little relevant.
Alright, well, the Azzy Drake's going to fall victim to that Death Spite, but the Rogue is finally basically taking some initiative on the board.
Actually, I think I like kind of playing around the Harrison maybe. I mean, it does seem like Show didn't have it, but at the same time, if you do need to dagger up one of these turns, you have the mana, you know? It's not like he's mana starved with his hand.
Yeah.
Only if he sprints, really, does he not have mana to dagger up freely.
Yeah, this is getting a little hairy for Show actually right now.
Especially with that Lotheb. Like, I wonder if there's any way to set up a lethal here. Like, Lotheb SI face, you put him to 19, you can dagger him to 18, you're setting up 12 on board, you have 2 Eviscerates, you have a Deadly. I feel like that play could just win the game. You have to be a little wary of taunts, but you have a sap. I think that play, looking at the hands now, I mean, he could execute for 6 on a Lotheb, so he wouldn't be just dead, but that would force him to use the Despite, and then he wouldn't have the combo.
And give up his turn.
Yeah.
Really makes
so. Yeah, I really like this from RDU. I mean,
yeah, very aggressive stuff.
Hey, that's what you kind of have to do at this point, and Lotheb basically makes it a safe bet. I mean, you can't get comboed out this turn. A Warsong top deck here would just be terrible for Show.
Oh, that's the worst top deck.
He has to 6 mana execute here if he wants to live, and would that even save him? If he puts his face into the SI, he would go down to 15. He'd be facing 5 plus 10. That wouldn't save him, right? And that's it. He's dead.
Oh,
There's
man.
no way to live.
Oh man.
You went
And
for
no
the risky
Warsong
play and
Commander.
it doesn't pay out. No
Yeah.
Warsong Commander. Yeah, we've seen that a few times. And when you run a combo deck with many different combo pieces, sometimes all the combo pieces you need are right at the bottom of the deck, and you have to accept some of those losses. And unfortunately, this is a tough one to swallow after having such a commanding lead and then losing a lot of matches. Did Show actually lose all 6?
He lost
for the
all.
team?
He went 0-6, or he went 1-6, I suppose. Yeah. So.
Is it over yet? Are you? Oh, there he goes.
There it is.
It seemed for a second that he didn't quite see it. He's like, oh man, oh there it is.
I think it was just a little bit of delay coming from the server to him, but that's it. I mean, Nihilum four straight, was it? Yeah, 4 straight.
Yeah.
Against Patron Warrior. I mean, surprisingly been one of those decks that's crumbled for some teams, and for Liquid, it's kind of the same story of, one player just couldn't get it done. And
yeah, and can you really blame Show for that series?
no, not too much. I mean,
Right.
it's always rough when that's going to happen, and I'm sure that the team won't blame him or anything, but it's, now they're 1-2. They were on the verge of, like Monk said, they could have been in second place had they just straight out won this series, and so it can't be feeling good.
Nihilum is the first team to advance to 3-0. I mean, with all the teams playing each other, that's 7 points you got to get, either a win or a loss on. So that basically kind of almost guarantees you're not falling in the last few spots, which gets you knocked out. I guess everyone in the entire team league can go like 4-3 and 3-4. It might be like some ridiculous tiebreakers, but even then,
they're basically.
I feel like in the clear. Yeah. I think Nihilum is kind of like the first team that's almost 100% going to advance. So really good stuff from them. Amazing comeback, and it's, to me, the most impressive thing is to see RDU successfully close out every single victory for his team. Even though individually he doesn't really have the most impressive win record, it's just the wins that really, really matter. He's been able to snatch those up and make a big showing. So very good stuff. Well done from both teams. But I have to say, sorry, Monk, but that was a pretty epic comeback. I'm kind of glad it happened.
Well, I'm not too sad because I think Team Liquid, even though we are 1-2 in match score, our game differential is pretty high because we went 6-3 and then 4-6 and then 5-6. So I think if it ever comes to like tiebreakers, we would probably like advance just based off of that. So
Yeah,
there's
and
still a lot of hope left.
there are 3 phases. Even 7th place kind of advances in a way. They just have to play a lot more.
Yeah.
8th place is the only team flat out eliminated, and so with a good tiebreak score, I mean, if you look at the scoreboard right now, there's no way Tempo Storm and Celestial can pass Liquid right now with how many game wins they have. So
Yeah,
they're still sitting okay for how their record is.
yeah, and not only that, I think Team Liquid, they faced off against like some of the stronger teams in the league. Maybe first week was Team Celestial, then Cloud9, and then Team Nihilum. And I think before the league started, I think these three teams were like 3 of the teams that people expected to do well. So again, there's still hope left. I'm just like talking myself out of this depression that I'm in, perhaps.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, some pretty epic games. We're going to take a little bit of a break, but before we do that, I want to tell you guys about one of our sponsors. The Amazon App Store has been doing some good stuff, and you guys have some pretty sweet deals to take advantage of. You guys can visit amazon.com/Hearthstone for cheap card packs using Amazon coins. There's a few deals going out, and if you want basically 50% off, you can tweet at hashtag ATLC, your favorite moment, or really anything super cool, and you get there's going to be 50 winners that are going to get $50 worth of coins for $25, so you get basically twice as many packs. And we are going to head off here for a break, but before we do that, you guys will get to see a pretty cool video that Trollden has made for the tournament. So hope you guys enjoy that. Thank you, Monk and Chalky, for the great cast. And we'll be back just a few minutes, guys.
Good luck, Chalky, tomorrow.